Let's fucking go! Okay, don't have to do anything. It always takes like a couple of minutes to, not a couple of minutes, like a few seconds to actually appear on the stream. If it's appearing somewhere else, I'm going to be very nice. Oh no, there you go. Fucking go!
It's up, baby.
Nice. Okay, right. So.
Okay. Well, we've got 3 watching. It says
3 watching. Yeah, that's fine.
3 sheep in the box.
3 sheep in the box. What do I need to do? Oh yes, I need to take this off. I'm not very good at streaming.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So here we are.
People don't come for this like professionalism. They come for the word of Smud.
There we go. Okay. Right. Okay, we sorted it now. There's the. There it is. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome back to CHUD Book Club, where we're continuing to read one of the worst books ever written. Which is obviously Smudboy's plot-focused creative writing. Learn how to give your flawed characters a motive and desire whilst writing solid, engaging stories. Which is a snappy title. Now I thought. Usually we'd sort of give an intro as to who Smudboy even is. So I think this time, rather than us sort of going into and explaining it, we could watch this video that he made himself to describe the whole situation. So I've got a watch together here that I've made and that you're in. Yeah. I don't actually know how to make it. Oh, there you go. I've made it full screen. So you can pause anytime you want, or we'll just sort of go over Smudboy's idea of what the book's about. Then, shall we?
What this epic tome is all about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So, here we go. And I guess for a lot of people, this will be the first time they're hearing his dulcet tones. So that's exciting.
His fruity Canadian baritone.
Exactly, yes. So here we go, I guess, without further ado. And it's not working. Excellent.
Good day.
Oh no, there we go, it was working. Hang on.
Good day.
Were you pausing it? Are you pausing
it? I'm not doing
anything. Brilliant. Oh, fuck's sake. Okay.
If I press play, what happens?
Hey, everyone.
Oh, there you go.
Good day, everyone. I'm here to announce my book on Amazon. Just got published today.
Are you seeing this, yeah?
Creative writing called Plot-Focused Creative Writing. Learn how to give your flawed characters a motive and desire while writing solid, engaging stories.
So I just want to point out, this is actually the full title of the book. Now. It's not a subtitle.
It's kind of based off all the stuff I've read from some of you guys who have sent over your scripts and ideas and sometimes just a premise. And all the little problems and...
See, it's because people keep sending scripts to Smud. That's why he's written this book.
Yeah, it was in too high demand.
People
needed to get his input on their ideas.
So let me just go over the chapters of what's in...
Fucking Yoda. People seek his wisdom.
In chapter 1, I talk about the 6 rules of good stories, and these are pretty much ironclad, unless you know how to break them.
I like that. I do like that he thinks they're ironclad.
A pad of paper.
Well, he says they're ironclad unless you know how to break them.
Yeah, which is interesting. Or an interesting way of
typical
boy.
Yeah.
Problem, or you don't know what to do next. You always go back to that original inspiration and say, "Oh yeah, that's what I'm writing about." Of course. Chapter 3 is the theme. This is the actual theme of the book. This is not some whimsical idea that someone interprets after romance or whatever. No, this is the actual...
For the benefit of the audience, we're going to be jumping into the 6 rules today, chapter 1.
So, always good to point that out before you start. And the plot is chapter 4. This is kind of the focus of the whole book, and it's been the focus of my channel. If you look at all my conversations and my analyses of video games and books and what have you. Chapter 5 is character, upon which the plot comes from. Chapter 6 is writing matrices. This is where I actually set up some ideas like symbolism and motifs.
Chapter 6, by the way, is an absolute classic.
Chapter 7 is a categorical ideal conflict, which means that you have your ideas put in categories and you idealize them. You have the most ideal scenario for these problems and ideas. Chapter 8 is writing mistakes. These are, I list some of the things I've encountered myself and others that it's just very common, or things to avoid whenever you're doing something very big, for example. And chapter 9 is I sort of bring it all together with called dessert and digestion. So I summarize some ideas. I bring a new 3-act structure in case you are having problems getting started.
A new 3-act structure.
And I say goodbye. Good luck. So thanks. Thanks for listening, guys. If you have any comments, please leave them in the video comments below. If you do happen to pick up the book, I would love a review. I would love to hear your feedback. And
I don't think he'd love the reviews he's actually got.
No, because as we saw last time, one of the reviews he actually got just said, "This is whack." So. Oh no!
Well, there we go. That's
yeah, that's
in his own words there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hello to everyone in the chat. Hello.
Hello. Yes. Oh, hang on. I'll just explain it. Okay, so I guess rather than spending any more time talking about the just talking about the book, I guess why not just sort of get into it?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't really have anything particularly deep to say there in that video, did he?
No, not really. I thought it was less. I need to change the title, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was saying that, he had ironclad rules for storytelling that you can only break if you know how to break them, which, is interesting. Yeah, because that is something, having the benefit of having read the entire book, that is something that he does. He does go into. He says you can't break the rules until you know the rules, which is good because today we're actually going to discuss the rules. We're going to be delving into chapter 1, the 6 rules. So yeah, well, I mean, shall we crack on with it?
Yeah, let's absolutely go for it. Here we go. I've got our music up here.
No 20-minute preamble this time.
No, we're going straight for it.
Straight in, no kissing.
Fireplace up here as well. Might just turn it down a little bit.
I should probably, hi to everyone in the chat. This chapter is extremely long. We probably won't finish it today, judging by the pace with which we've covered the book so far. But this is the chapter where he, if you remember, we read the intro to chapter 1 last time, which started with that incredible paragraph that began with writing.
Yes, I do remember that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. But yes, today we're going to get into Smud's rules, his commandments, really, for writing.
I am extremely excited because obviously Smudboy is one of these people who does believe in the concept or the idea of objectively good art. So So I guess this is where we actually get into his laying out of what makes an objectively good work of art, which I'm quite excited for, honestly.
And crucially, Smud says many times in life and in this book that it's okay to break the rules so long as you know them. So here's the thing: we're going to learn these rules, we're going to soak them in, and then we're going to decide if we want to break them or not. I think that's a good. Have we got the jazz going in the background?
Yeah, we've got a jazz going. We've got our roaring fire, and I think we're ready to get into it.
Well, people in the chat, get ready. Get yourself into your high-backed armchair. Set yourself up by the fire with an adult beverage, some fat lines, a little bit of black tar heroin.
I'm sorry, what? Where are you going with this?
Just get yourself shot up, and then we'll dive into this.
Get yourself shot up.
Yeah, shoot up some heroin.
Right. Okay.
Well, I'm escalating from. I normally say get an adult beverage. I'm humorously escalating for comic effect.
Okay. Sure.
Drop a tab of acid. Pull a seat by the fire.
Okay, right. Well,
let's delve into it. Okay.
Are
you ready, Matt?
Let's go for it, mate.
Okay. All right, Fox has already grabbed the blankies and is cozy, so let's go.
Excellent. Okay, so obviously we've got rule 1: achieve verisimilitude.
Yeah, rule 1, achieve verisimilitude.
So obviously that's a tangible thing that people can do, right? Yeah. So that's
Yeah. Well, you've got your doubts here, Matt, but we're going to get into it and we're going to see what he says. So
I'm excited. I am excited.
So we've got another quote from Harlan Ellison from Dark Dreamers again, from Dark Dreamers Part 3 again, in fact. And Harlan has this to say.
Oh yeah.
I don't want real. I want it to seem real. That's the difference. And we've got the little brackets there indicating that Smud has cut down this quote. So I wonder what he's pruned out there. But Harlan goes on to say, if I want fiction, I want verisimilitude. It is supposed to hold up the mirror of life and turn it slightly so you see things from a new angle. That's what fantasy does. And yeah, that's Mr. Harlan Ellison from Dark Dreamers Part 3.
Right, okay. So he's a big fan of Harlan Ellison. Again, I'm not really familiar with Harlan Ellison. I think you're a bit more familiar with Ellison than I am.
Yeah. I mean, he's as we covered a little bit last time, science fiction author. Among his most famous works are I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Dangerous Visions, which is a compilation of stories that he and others wrote, and God, what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Yeah, he wrote this post-apocalyptic thing called A Boy and His Dog, which they made a film out of. He's also famous for suing James Cameron because Terminator was too close to one of his stories.
Brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, he's also famous, as we covered last time, for copywriting his own name.
Yeah.
So, an eccentric, a blowhard, an interesting fellow. But let's see how Smud applies Harlan's philosophy there to Rule 1, achieve verisimilitude. Okay. So, and this is the word of Smud now. Oh, shit, hang on. You're striving for the appearance of being true, not real. Fiction must be believable, but not necessarily realistic. So already, he's kind of... I'm confused by the terms he's laying out here, but we'll press on before we take it apart too much. This is the foundation for the willing suspension of disbelief, which must be constantly maintained. If it isn't, any second a movie is taking place, any line of dialogue, any poorly constructed prop or fight scene, or any word in any story has the possibility of breaking someone's choice, brackets willing, to accept what is happening is believable, possible, or actually happening. Suspension of disbelief.
Right, okay, hang on. So what did any of that mean? And also, why did he potentially put a quote at the beginning? I'm not really sure what.
Again, I think Smudboy mostly uses quotations so that he can be like, I have read,
Oh god, yeah, okay.
Although actually, I think Dark Dreamers is a TV show. I'm not entirely sure on that, but yeah. So yeah, let's pick that apart because he's saying you're striving for the appearance of being true, not real.
Yeah.
Fiction must be believable, but not necessarily realistic. So, to an extent, I understand what he's saying. He's kind of saying, it has to be believable within itself, I guess, within its own universe. I'm trying very hard not to use the phrase Star Wars in this conversation, so we'll pick a different example.
I mean, yeah.
So if you take, say, I don't know, like what's a movie? Let's take we've used Lord of the Rings before. Let's use Lord of the Rings. So Lord of the Rings is not a realistic story, but it's relatively believable within the context of its own universe, right? There's nothing in it that makes you go, there's no point where Gandalf goes, fuck all this walking, lad. Let's get in the car. That would be breaking the realism of Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. I mean, my grandmother did watch Lord of the Rings, the first one when it came out, and her main takeaway was that it was unrealistic that Legolas kept shooting at arrows but never seemed to run out. Which is that's breaking the.
Yeah, to a point. Yeah, I think. I mean, again, this is all. Again, he's writing these very objective-sounding rules, but they're entirely subjective, aren't they? Because what shakes your foundation of willing suspension of disbelief is going to be different to other people, right? Because as you say, yes, Legolas does fire about 100 arrows in a minute and never seems to run out.
Yeah.
But most people watching Lord of the Rings, that isn't an issue. That's just part of
the thing. Yeah, it's the thing that happens, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
again, if that took you out of it was like the example we were talking about last time with the aliens from Signs, right? Where I can acknowledge that people would still like that movie. It's just, for me, that little thing bothers me. But that's not an objective thing, right? It's just, again, it's this use of objectivity when it's like, but this is so subjective. Everything you're talking about is so subjective.
Yeah.
Because we're listing examples already where, it's not objectively bad that Legolas shoots 1,000 arrows a minute, but for someone like your grandma, like that, she might go, well, that's a bit stupid.
And especially considering that Smudboy is the sort of person who probably would say that if he didn't like Lord of the Rings, right? Because he says stuff like that about Star Wars and the disappearing knife and shit.
Yeah,
how it's like doesn't make 100% logical sense. It's like, but if he didn't like Lord of the Rings, he probably would come to that exact same conclusion.
He probably does like Lord of the Rings because the Smudcast, the EFAT boys all like Lord of the Rings, so I assume they kind of share an opinion on that, right?
Yeah, well, to be fair, Smudboy does have to check whether or not Mauler likes something before deciding he likes it himself.
True. And to be fair, like, most people like Lord of the Rings of our generation, I would say.
Well, yes, they are great films.
Our age, yeah. So yeah, but again, it's that. Yeah, you're right. It's that thing of it's only an objective flaw in stuff they don't like. Like that always pretty consistent. Whereas when it's stuff they do like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Or it's a minor quibble, right? That's one that comes up a lot where they'll be like, oh, well, you're just bringing up a minor flaw. It's like, but that's all you do.
Yeah,
all you do is minor flaws.
Yeah, well, I guess this is the thing with like us doing this is that like I'm sure it does really piss Smudboy off, but also like there's not much. Like it's not like he can turn around and like get mad at us because like that's all his career is,
Well, yeah, picking other people apart. Yeah,
picking other people apart and incredibly, like honestly, like I was thinking the other day, like what could he possibly say? Could he be like, oh, you spent 2 hours, you spent like 3 hours on one part of the book? It's like, mate, that's your job. So yeah, it is fascinating, but I don't know. Well, I guess expecting people like Smudboy to have any kind of self-awareness is.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see what he would make of it, right? Because, yeah, you're right. His whole career is basically doing this. Especially with other people's YouTube videos, like that is the EFAT/Smudcast formula, is like picking apart other people's content.
Yeah, for sure.
And I notice one thing that Smudboy does a lot, right? He covers this one woman, Maggie Mayfish. Do you know her?
I do like Maggie Mayfish. I like her videos. Yeah.
She's hit and miss for me. I really like her Zack Snyder videos, but some of her other one I'm a bit eye-rolly about. But that's a personal taste issue more than anything. And I certainly am not going to dedicate like hour upon hour of my life to picking her apart.
Well, I mean, obviously the classic one was EFAP taking 12 hours to whine about Jenny Nicholson, wasn't it?
Yeah. But the reason I bring up Maggie is that Smudcast has covered pretty much every one of her videos after a certain point, and they are not charitable towards her in any way. They basically imply that she is like deeply mentally ill.
What the fuck?
I mean, they use language that is a bit more ableist than what I just said. But
Jesus.
Yeah, and like they tend to that tends to be that angle, like, oh, she's kooky, therefore she's fucking insane, right? Like that's their thing. So I kind of feel like if Smudboy had an issue with us covering him, I would just direct him to his own videos and go like, look, listen. We're covering you and we are making fun of you, and like, yes, all right, there's been times where we've been perhaps a little unkind, but like we've never implied that you're like mentally deficient or anything like that. So I think maybe just chill would be my advice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's I don't know. I guess I find Smudboy particularly frustrating just because like he will constantly criticize other people, but if you criticize him, he will sort of get a little bit upset.
Yeah, well, they all do. Mauler's the same.
Oh, is he? I don't really know much about Mauler. I know Mauler's fans really don't like it when you criticize him because there's a whole thing about like if people criticize Mauler on Twitter, he goes off on one. But
yeah, no, he does. Yeah. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked.
So
we're getting sidetracked trying to justify our decision to spend so many hours of our life talking about Smudboy. Yeah.
I mean, the real answer is just that we're just bored and he's an amusing clown. So
yeah. So yeah, sorry, we've got someone in the chat, Soot on the Ice, who I think is making some interesting points. They're saying fiction should always be true. That doesn't mean it has to be realistic or even believable. the parts that matter should ring true in its essence. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. I'm in agreement with that to some extent, where it's like, to me, the kind of story logic doesn't have to ring super true, so long as the kind of emotional core, or so long as there is something that you can hook into and kind of relate to about whatever you're watching. It can be the most fantastical thing or the most unrealistic thing possible, but I think there has to be an element of emotional truth, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. But they go on to say, like in Lord of the Rings, what matters isn't whether arrows don't run out or whether orcs are believable. The important bits are about friendship and overcoming evil. Rings true even if the rest is unbelievable. Like, yeah, I agree with that fundamentally, right? Like, what draws people back to Lord of the Rings is not how realistic the armor or the weapons or the world is necessarily. It's like this core theme of people coming together to kind of rise up against a greater evil, I suppose.
Yeah.
And friendship, fellowship, yeah, you know. And I think that is what hooks people in. As much as it can be fun to debate the mechanics of a universe. But this is just another thing that online nerds have ruined, right? Is discussing the mechanics of a universe, because now you just end up sounding like one of these people who picks plot holes apart for a living.
Yeah, that particular kind of criticism is just, I mean, this has been talked to death everywhere else, but yeah, that is just particularly pathetic. Just crying about plot holes on the internet is just, like, who gives a shit, honestly? like,
to be fair, I don't mind. Like, it used to be kind of funny and like a nerdy thing to do, to be like, oh yeah, let's talk about, you know, just plot holes in Star Wars, whatever, like that, you know, like the famous bit in Clerks where they're discussing the contractors that must have died on the Death Star.
Oh yeah,
you know? Yeah. I agree, Water. Yeah, so I like it when saying I like it when films follow a strong internal logic is a valid statement. Saying it has to follow one is a nonsense statement. Yes, I totally agree.
Well, I mean, that's the whole problem with this book, right? Is that Smudboy is basically just saying what he reckons a movie should be like, and like if you don't give a shit what Smudboy or people like him think, it's just sort of pointless.
Yeah, I want to be clear to the chat. Like, I'm not necessarily saying like Smudboy's taste is wrong, because in some ways I think we probably have fairly similar taste when it comes to certain things. Like, I do tend to like science fiction or fantasy that is quite not mechanical necessarily, but you know, has its world explained quite well, and it all makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm not a huge fan of like soft magic type stuff, I guess. Although then again, it depends on the story being told, really, because like, yeah, I don't know. We're already getting lost. We're only a few paragraphs in.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Should we get back to?
Yeah. Should we get back into Smud?
Okay. So we've got with the suspension of disbelief. That's perfectly valid. We all know where that is, I guess. But I guess then that is subjective, though, right? Like, because the willing suspension of disbelief, it's like obviously anything can take you out of a story or the suspension of disbelief. Like, you know, as I mentioned, like for my granny, it was that you never see Legolas like making any more arrows or whatever. But like, obviously for most people, like that wouldn't matter. And for Smudboy, it's like, the knife. It kind of
boring scene, right? If you just saw Legolas making retrieving all of his arrows.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously for people like Smudboy, it's like the knife in Star Wars that like in the where it's the throne room scene that really upsets him, and it's just like, all for most people that wouldn't like you could
right. Also, actually, I've got one. Sorry, I did say we want to cut down on the Star Wars talk, and I do, but there was also one from one of his videos where he was talking about again the fucking bombers from The Last Jedi, right? Like in the opening scene.
Oh my God. Okay.
He was going on about the bombers and how it's a plot hole because in the lore there are Y-wings that should do the job that the bombers were doing, right?
Right.
And he was saying that the scene would be objectively improved if somebody mentioned, like, we've run out of Y-wings. Or, oh, all the Y-wings got hit in the last attack by the First Order, and now we've got to use these shit bombers. What? And it's like, why would that objectively improve the scene? It'd just be weird, wouldn't it? Like, I mean, again, it wouldn't, like, I wouldn't notice if that line was in it. Do you know what I mean?
Who cares? I mean, this is like the classic, you know, like the was it in The Simpsons, the comic book guy sort of picking holes in stuff. It's just sort of, it is just who the fuck cares, and if you do care, why? Like, it really doesn't make a difference in the like grand scheme of things, you know.
Yeah. Well, as you say, water. Yeah. I retract my comment on soft magic a little bit because there are a lot of texts like that are magical realist or use soft magic that I do enjoy. I think when I was talking specifically about things that are, very marketed as like sci-fi or fantasy in that regard, like I do tend to like the ones that feel more grounded, I suppose. But again, this is all personal taste shit, isn't it? It's not like one is objectively good, one is objectively bad. It is what it is. But anyway, Smud thinks differently, as we know.
That's fair.
And, we'll jump back into this. So, Smud says, where were we? Okay, yeah. Blah, blah, blah.
We've got suspension of disbelief.
Yes. This one rule alone is and one rule is capitalized like the One Ring.
The one rule to ring them all. I don't know.
They thought that subjective movie criticism was valid, but they were all of them deceived. This one, we're trading all the Star Wars references for Lord of the Rings references. This one rule alone is the cornerstone of all writing. It is the quality that all writing must possess. When in doubt, or more importantly, when you're so confident, make sure that your writing is believable. Why does he always want to sound like fucking Master Splinter or Yoda or something? Like he's always trying to talk in these like weird fucking these weird things, He's always been like everything's a contradiction to him.
It does seem like a like an old master kind of
Miyagi shit, right? Because he starts this rule section by saying you're striving for the appearance of being true, not real. And then he goes on to say, when in doubt, or more importantly, when you're so confident. It's like, okay, mate, like not some fucking wise monk sitting on a rock. Anyway,
when you're just, I don't know. I just don't get. We could just like name examples of how this doesn't make sense, but it's just sort of you want the audience to actively understand and accept what's going on, how someone, the writer you is doing it. I don't really get that, but like, why does everything have to be understandable? Like some things can be just weird and wild and out there and dreamlike.
Yeah, and that can be the point, right? Like, it's so it's weird, isn't it? Like,
and there are movies that will just go out of their way to remind you that you're watching a movie. Like everything with a fourth wall break basically will take you out of the
like Wes Anderson films. They're so like staged that like it's drawing attention to the artifice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and like obviously the classic one is well, not the classic one, but like the one that people at Smudboy will get is someone like Deadpool, that he does actually talk to the audience. And sort of reminds the audience that they're watching a film, which sort of does take them out of the story. But that's the point, But it's again, none of these rules are objective, and you can find examples of things that even people like Smudboy would agree are good that break these rules.
But remember, these rules are ironclad until you know how to break them.
Well,
so again, it's another contradiction.
Well, this is the thing: is that okay? So he sets up the rules. That would be fine. But does he then? Obviously, you've read the rest of the book. So does he then actually go out of his way to say, "This is how to break them"?
Not really. His whole thing is like, because this is one of his criticisms of Rian Johnson, not just in terms of Star Wars, but I think in Knives Out as well, where he's saying like, but you don't understand the rules of the genre or the franchise. You're trying to subvert them before you know what they are. Which,
of course, he does know what they are because he's a
but then again, it's that thing of like he'll talk a big game about you have to know how to break them. He doesn't really go into how to break them or how to subvert expectations well.
Yeah,
he just kind of, because like to be fair, that could be an interesting point if he was again not objective, subjective, but if he was going like Last Jedi, Knives Out, whatever, doesn't work because it's too focused on subverting the audience expectation that it becomes unsatisfying, and kind of went into why he thought that was. That's a valid criticism. That would be kind of interesting, but
yeah, no, for sure. It's just
I don't agree. To be clear, I don't agree, but you don't have to agree for a criticism to be valid, I suppose.
No, this is true. I mean, I think the one of the main problems that we have is that like Smudboy will say that he thinks something and then doesn't go on to explain why he thinks it or why he thinks it's objectively true.
Yeah, he just states facts, and that's, you're supposed to just go from there, right? Like that. It's almost, I'm not necessarily comparing them in terms of politics, but he's almost kind of got that Ben Shapiro vibe where he just says things and you're supposed to just move on from that, like that presupposition. You're supposed to just go, okay, accepting that that's true, accepting your terms, let's continue this debate. And Smudboy kind of does the literary criticism version of that, where he's just like, this is what makes a good story. Everyone can accept that supposition, and then we'll just move on.
Well, it's basically just creating a straw man, I guess, right?
Yeah. And you're just kind of like, okay, but I don't agree with the premise. So.
Well, I think Stephen Crowder recently did one of these on Twitter, where after Elliot Page came out, he said something along the lines of, well, actually, pronouns don't change biology. Haha, owned. And it's like, no one was saying that. You're just inventing this.
Yeah. Anyway, Elliot Page, if you're listening, we love you. We've got you back.
Yeah.
I don't think they're listening.
I very much doubt he's listening, honestly.
Imagine, though.
That would be wild.
Maybe Elliot really is familiar with Smudboy and wants to hear us take Smudboy down.
Oh, is that what we're doing? I thought we were just sort of lightly mocking him.
Well, in a way, we are destroying him with facts and logic, obviously, but we're doing it in a kind of soft-hearted, lefty way.
Okay, that's true.
We're offering constructive feedback.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah, and also going off on massive tangents. Don't forget that.
No, of course, yeah.
That's kind of our remit, is lightly mocking Smud and going off on one.
Yeah.
Anywho, slaloming back into the paragraph, if I may.
Yeah.
I've completely lost my place, so I'm just going to keep talking.
To use details, I think.
Oh god. Yes, hang on. Yes. So I'll backtrack a little bit. When in doubt, or more importantly, when you're so confident, make sure that what you're writing is believable. So he just says that as if that's something you should just know how to do. So if you're doubting whether your writing is believable, his advice is make sure what you're writing is believable.
Yeah, see, this isn't really a story. Well, not a story. This isn't really a book about like how to write, right? It's supposed to. I mean, it's even called like, I can't remember what it's called, like how to write or something. But like why? Like, how can you presume to tell people how to write a book, or to how to write a story, without explaining how to do that? It's you just say, oh, you may as well just come in and say, write a book. All right, but
write it better. Yeah.
How? Just do it well.
This is the writing advice equivalent of when someone goes, oh, I'm feeling really depressed, and somebody responds with just like, well, cheer up then.
Yeah,
try to have an attitude. It's like, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought of that. I had not thought of that.
Yeah, stop being depressed, you knobhead. Like, fuck's sake, cheer up, you miserable bastard.
I mean, would that it were so simple, right? But anyway.
Yeah.
You want your audience to actively understand and accept what is going on, and how someone, the writer, you, thanks for that, Smud, is doing it.
Yeah.
The quickest way to do this is to use details. How do you believe someone's story? They have insider knowledge of the events therein and then some. They have specific information no one else would possess emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually.
What?
This is generally... Sorry, have you got something to say there, Matt?
I just thought, the quickest way, like, in what way? I guess I'm just struggling to understand what it means. So the quickest way to do this is use details. Like, how do you believe someone's story? Like, isn't that the point? Like, aren't you supposed to tell me like how you believe someone's story?
No,
right?
He's just asking a rhetorical question.
Okay, right, but then he answers it with, they have insider knowledge of the events therein and then some. It's like, well...
Yeah, which is interesting because it implies that Smudboy believes any sufficiently detailed story. So if you went up to him and just went like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late to this meeting at Smudboy HQ. On the way here, I was held at gunpoint by a giraffe who's escaped from the zoo and has some links to Al-Qaeda. And then if you just, he'd be like, well, I'm skeptical of that. But if you then just filled it in with enough detail. I was like, yeah, no. He was. It was on Fifth Avenue, and he jumped out of a white van. He was wielding a Kalashnikov. There was 2 hippos with him, all wearing balaclavas. Like, if you just fill it out enough, he'll believe that you were mugged by a terrorist giraffe.
An old school terrorist giraffe as well. I mean, like Al Qaeda. That's old school.
They're due a comeback, aren't they?
Did you come back? Fuck. Okay, let's moving swiftly.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, it just.
No, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it is like, yeah, it does sort of imply that everything.
You're dazzled by my analogy there, aren't you?
It's just a wild analogy. I was
gonna say Marxist giraffes, but I don't know if this is the audience for that, so I quickly slalomed into Al Qaeda.
Oh, because this is the audience for Al Qaeda. Obviously.
Well, it's about time for Naughty's nostalgia to start, right? So.
Yeah, excellent. That's some good emoji game there. Daft Gently, brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Daft Gently. Thanks for having my back on this one.
But yeah, I guess it does just sort of. Essentially, what you're saying is that the more detail you put into your story, like the better it is. Which
but that's not true, though, right? Because if someone's lying to you and they keep adding details, I mean, I know we're not talking about lying specifically; we're talking about stories, right? Yeah. I think a better piece of advice is like the confidence with which you state a story is what makes it believable, right? Like,
well, I don't know. For me, it just sort of seems like he's demanding more and more details. Like The Last Jedi would have been better if they'd have explained the technical readouts of all the of like the
they definitely explained that the Y-wings could not be used for various reasons, so they had to use the bombers.
Yeah, it's just
that'd be
like,
objectively better. Yeah,
just pointless trivia. That's all it is. It's just like, who cares?
And Lord of the Rings would be objectively better if they explained that Legolas collects all his arrows after firing them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just this sort of thing is just it's purely subjective, and also I doubt that he actually really cares about this stuff in films that he does like. Also,
I've just thought, Matt, you can tell your grandma that I think Legolas gets a fresh quiver of arrows when they go to Lothlorien. I'm pretty sure about that. So he does stock up at various points. But admittedly, he does fire way more arrows than he has in any given quiver.
Yeah.
But look, who cares? Who cares?
It's just, well, I mean, Smudboy's sort of approach to this is just sort of watching a film and then going ding every 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is CinemaSins, which is interesting because they all hate CinemaSins.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason they hate CinemaSins is that CinemaSins is wrong, not that the style is wrong. Like, they're lost because I know. Well, I'm talking about EFAP here because they've covered CinemaSins before.
Anarcho-giraffism, I love that.
Oh dear. I sometimes forget that people are listening to what I'm saying, and then I get startled by stuff like in the chat, the emoji game with the giraffes that's going on here.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm glad that people are willing to listen to me talk at a shop of a Saturday. But no, what I was going to say, yeah, EFAP, they've covered, because I know JXE, who's unfortunately associated with EFAP, does a lot of coverage of CinemaSins, and I know EFAP have covered it as well, and they basically will go through it. Sorry, Water's just come in with only the clapping emoji. Only 2000s kids will remember these 10 things. Number 10, the Taliban.
Fucking hell. Wow. Okay, that's quite the take.
I mean, to be fair, though, if you were doing a top 10 things you remember from the 2000s, like 9/11 would have to be on there, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, but it's not like anyone's forgotten it nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'd be on the same list as, like, you know, Britney Spears or whatever.
Well, you never know.
Yeah. Number 1, 9/11. Number 2,
Saddam Hussein. It's just like...
Whatever happened to that guy? Where is he now?
Well, I think we know what happened to him, but we're not going to show the video.
He's dead. He's deceased. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Anyway, let's move swiftly on, because we are now getting into a weird Taliban area that I've unwittingly dragged us into.
Yeah, and obviously neither of us are like any experts in,
I really thought you were about to go, neither of us are active members of Al Qaeda.
I didn't think that really needed to be said, but
But just for the record, if the FBI are watching this, or the CIA, I should say, we are not, nor have we ever been, active members of Al Qaeda.
brilliant. Thank you for clearing that
Maybe
up.
the word active lends some ambiguity to that. We're also not inactive members of Al Qaeda.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess thanks for the inevitable arrest.
Anyway, back to objective storytelling.
Yeah.
Again, we're falling into this trap where we're talking about literally anything other than Smudboy's book.
Yes, that's true.
Which is easy to do because the book is so dull.
That's correct. Yes.
So blah blah blah. They have specific information no one else would possess emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. This is generally why the old adage of write what you know is so important. You have experienced something on multiple levels because you've lived through it. Reality is quite believable. Yeah. Which is interesting because there's another old adage, which is that truth is stranger than fiction. So there you go. This should allow you to write about this experience similarly for a fictional character. So he's saying, like, if you've experienced something similar to what your character is going through, use your own knowledge to inform that, right?
Okay, but also, like, if you only write about things that you've experienced, that, like, how do you write any kind of story that involves things that you haven't experienced, right? Like, I don't know, like fucking Star Wars, for example. Like.
Well, we've all experienced a space war, right?
I haven't experienced a lightsaber duel on a space station the size of a small moon either.
Famously, George Lucas did grow up on a moisture farm in the desert.
Yeah.
And was radicalized and fought against colonial powers. So, in a way, he is just writing his own autobiography there.
Okay, well, I guess I'll defer to your superior knowledge of George Lucas there.
My made-up knowledge of George Lucas.
Yes.
To be fair, I do think it's true that George Lucas grew up in, like, a rural area and stuff. So, like, I think some of what Smudboy's saying, if he reworded it to be less nonsensy, makes a certain amount of sense. We're saying, because basically what I would say instead of this is, like, whatever story you're writing, you need some, relatability is the wrong word, but you need some emotional core that seems true. Yeah. So even if you're writing something quite fantastical, you still need to tap, like Star Wars, you need to tap into something that, you know, speaks to people, or speaks to you, rather, because then there will at least be some humanity to it. Like for example, like, you know, George Lucas, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying he kind of grew up in a rural area, and, you know, he was the typical sort of kid with a big dream who wanted to move to Hollywood sort of thing. So, like, there is some of that in Luke Skywalker, right? Yeah. I mean, admittedly, it's contextually changed to be about a space war, but I kind of get what I think he's trying to say, which, again, that could be a quote for the cover, right? I kind of think I get what he's trying to say. Because we're never too clear on what Smud's trying to say, because he, again, obfuscates it with such nonsense.
Yeah, I guess...
Can I just say, Riot Fox is calling you out in the chat. It says, sheep didn't even get raided by the Nazis hiding on the dark side of the moon. What a bougie.
That's... Yes, I should hand in my my leftist card. I'm not a real leftist because I haven't been raided by the Nazis living on the dark side of the moon. Although I thought it was the clangers that lived on the moon. What happened to them?
Well, I don't want to point fingers at the clangers, but fascist sympathisers, I reckon.
Oh shit! You think the clangers are the Nazis hiding on the dark side of the moon?
Yeah. I mean, they are. You know, there's only one race that lives on the moon in the clangers.
Well, no, because there's there's the big bird, right?
Well, there's the soup dragon.
The soup dragon. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, the soup dragon isn't a clanger.
Yeah, but you know.
Or do you think he's the dictator?
I was going to say the soup dragon. So the clangers represent the Nazis, and the soup dragon represents their alliance with Imperial Japan. The clangers is a metaphor for World War II.
Oh Jesus, that's
you're just not based enough, mate.
Fucking hell! No, I think you need to get into BreadTube, honestly, because that's a video essay I think that needs to be. Yeah, but
I'll say something about the soup dragon, right? He's a dragon that turns up on the moon, and he hands out soup to the clangers. Yeah. Okay, that seems fairly based.
Yeah.
And I've got to think about this. There's not clearly the clangers don't have any resources of their own, otherwise they wouldn't need soup dragon to give them soup.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be any vegetation growing on the moon, as far as I remember. So that all begs the question, what is the suit made out of? What I'm saying is, I think there's a Soylent Green situation going on in the Clangers.
Oh, no. Oh.
I think Soup Dragon is feeding them the bodies of their own people. And I think the Clangers are looking the other way.
Dragon soup is people! I love it.
I think they're letting it happen.
Do you think so? Oh, man.
I really hope people in the chat know what the Clangers are, because
They
otherwise
almost certainly don't.
that last couple of minutes was just fucking nonsense.
No, they definitely
Real
don't.
Dr. Crazy, howdy boys, howdy sir.
I can guarantee you no one knows. Like, because half my audience is American, so they almost certainly won't know the Clangers.
The Clangers is exactly how we just described it.
Yeah, it's some kind of fascist...
Cannibal fascist cult that lives on the moon.
Yeah.
Some of that is accurate. I'll let you decide which. Anywho, so where do we get to? This is no, hang on, we read that. Reality is quite believable. This should allow you to write about this experience similarly for a fictional character. This can... At least one person has not a clue what the Clangers are. Brilliant. Well, we'll stop wasting your time. We'll start.
I just want to say, look at these motherfuckers. These are... They're monsters.
Are we supposed to be seeing an image of Clangers right now?
Well, yes, it's because the stream is like slightly behind me. Okay, right, brilliant. Oh wow, it is quite behind. Okay, well, you're just gonna have to
eventually an image of a Clanger will appear.
Here we go.
Here we go. These are the Clangers.
They're
weird
monsters.
creatures that live on the moon.
Yeah, I can't even remember what these little things are.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Is that their children that they're sacrificing to the super dragon?
Well, either that's their children or that's their meat. Whatever those
both.
things. Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Both. A modest proposal was about Clangers. Anyway, let's get back into Smud's book, because we've been talking about Clangers for what seems like hours.
Okay.
So anyway, Smud has told us we need verisimilitude. We need to write what we know. Clangers are fascists.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he goes, yes, reality is quite believable. This should allow you to write about this experience similarly for a fictional character. This goes hand in hand with common knowledge and common sense. If you say so.
I mean, I guess it's just sort of, it is just kind of like, oh god, right, Fox just pointed out they are all white, so it's an ethno state.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to say. The Clangers, it is an ethno state, yeah.
Oh, that's I don't like that. Anyway, no, I guess I sort of understand what Smudboy is saying in that, like, sort of emotionally write what you know, but also I guess that does sort of mean, like, don't push boundaries or don't, like, explore things that you might not be 100% familiar with.
Well, yeah, or like, I mean, like, that's the thing about write what you know. I think people take it very literally.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, it's write how people are, really, is a better thing to say. Like, if you need to think of, let's say you're writing a character, or say I'm writing a character who's, a middle-aged woman with an alcohol problem who happens to be a lesbian. Like, I am only one of those things.
Wait, what?
That was a joke implying that I was an alcoholic. But
Okay.
I'm not.
Thanks for clearing that up.
But anyway, yeah, the point is, I don't know what that experience is like, right? But I can find out. Like, I can talk to people, or I can, I can base the character on someone I know, or I can base the character on someone who's appeared in other media and just tweak certain elements, or, there's like, write what you know, I think is kind of a misleading way of saying it. It's kind of write with a certain amount of, I'm trying not to say verisimilitude because that's Smud's word, but you know what I'm trying to say, like.
No, I do, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I guess it's sort of, the answer is somewhere in between, but, like, it does sort of mean that, like, you wouldn't be able to write anything that's particularly out there if you followed this advice,
Yeah. Anyway, come on, we're getting very sidetracked today. We're kind of a bit loopy today, it seems like.
Yeah, I think we've both sort of lost it. I don't know what's going on.
We've had Al Qaeda drafts and we've had ethno state clangers. It's all been going off.
Oh, the clangers. Oh, mate. Yeah.
Don't think about them, mate. You'll only have nightmares.
I hate the noise they make as well.
Water does say, you say write how people are, but the problem is that absurdist fiction exists, as does fiction where people work differently. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I'm trying to extrapolate like very basic rules out of Smudboy's writing here. I'm not necessarily saying that these are the rules that you should absolutely follow, because I don't believe in objective rules for fiction. Smudboy does. And this is the thing, like most writing advice books are obviously not taking things like absurdist fiction into account. They're, giving very, very basic advice about how to write a story that most people will enjoy.
I mean, that was most of my university. So I did actually get a degree in screenwriting. Well, it's sort of more film and English sort of thing. But and like I mostly just got taught, like how to make a traditional sort of 3-act structure kind of just like standard Hollywood movie, right? Because they think that most people want to learn to write so that they can become successful within the capitalist hellscape, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, most people do.
Yeah, but it's not usually about writing a good story. It's about writing a successful story, which isn't necessarily always the same thing.
Yeah, Water, I know you're not calling me out. I'm just you pointed out a hole in my logic, and I'm happy to help fill that. But yes, you're quite right. All the rules do have holes, and this is kind of the point, right? It's like they're all so subjective that you can think of just as many examples of texts that don't follow the rule as do, and in some cases you can think of more texts that don't follow the rule, right? Anyway, let's Smud talk, because we've been rambling on about all sorts.
No, that's fair.
So he says this goes hand in hand with common knowledge and common sense. A writer is trying to influence another's mind and appeal to their imaginations. Okay. They are playing a trick on the reader. Pay attention to me, they say. Now, I think that's very telling, but let's press on. But they need to know how. Aristotle, which I'll write about in Rule 2.
Oh, God. Okay, now, before we get on to Aristotle, I will say that I do think that Smudboy is the sort of person who does require attention, which is why it's particularly sad that his channel is not doing so well.
Yeah, I do think it's very telling that he says, the writer is trying to influence another's mind, is a very telling way to put it.
Yeah, like, I just want to point out, so I've got like Smudboy's social blade up here, right, and I did just check it just before this. He is actually he's lost 100 subscribers this month, and on the side,
interesting, he's been putting out videos like a motherfucker in the last couple of weeks.
It does actually say Smudboy should reach 21.5k subs around tomorrow. And the reason it says that is because he's currently got 25.6k, and he's going to lose enough that he hits another milestone, which is just sort of like, I don't know, it's particularly sad because he's obviously so invested in sort of getting all this attention. I think that's why he does like Smudcast and stuff, and like deliberately tries to tear down other people's work to sort of build himself up, and why he sort of he sort of plugs the fact that he's got so many like much more famous or much more successful like YouTube friends like Literature Devil and stuff, and it is quite sad that he does all that for basically nothing. Yeah,
it's the tragedy at the heart of Smud.
Yeah, he's a tragic figure, I think.
Yeah, and let's just go over that paragraph again, because I think it's the most honest glimpse we've had into Smud's psyche since we started this book.
Yeah.
A writer is trying to influence another's mind and appeal to their imaginations. They are playing a trick on the reader. Pay attention to me, they say. But they need to know how. So he said all writers are attention seekers, but only some of them know how to do it right. Aristotle, which, to be fair, you could argue that most creative people are attention seekers to some degree, I guess.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know, like, what do you mean by they need to know how? Like,
well, they need to know the objective rules on how to do a story, mate.
Oh, I see what you. Okay, yeah.
Well, what have you been reading these last few weeks?
No, sorry, I misinterpreted that. I thought it meant that like a writer's trying to influence another's mind. But it says, but they need to know how. I thought that was referring to the audience.
Oh,
but
yeah,
no, I see.
It's very badly written. Yeah, it's very badly written. Aristotle, which I'll write about in Rule 2,
Excellent.
wrote about three. Bear in mind, we had Socrates last week, didn't we?
Oh yeah. Well, you have to have at least a working knowledge of Greek philosophy in order to understand this masterpiece. Honestly, this Smud's magnum opus.
Yeah. So Aristotle, which I'll write about in Rule 2, wrote about 3 modes of persuasion and how they work to effectively share ideas.
Okay.
But that works fine in written traditions too. Authority, emotion, and logic have been around for millennia and aren't going away.
Okay.
No matter what literary techniques, creativity, combination of chapters or scenes, style, brilliant ideas, magnificent characters, or language you use, whatever you write, it must be believable. To ensure a level of believability, your language must be sufficient for your lowest grade reading level reader. Sorry.
Hang on a sec. Hang on. So it's just like, that's what literary techniques. I like. Why did he bring up Aristotle? Oh, I guess we'll find out in Rule 2. But like,
yeah. No, he was saying, he brought up Aristotle because Aristotle wrote about the 3 modes of persuasion.
But he doesn't really go into the 3 modes of persuasion. But I guess
because he's not read it. He's not read it.
Okay, fair enough.
He just likes to say stuff to sound smart. Like,
yeah, that's fair enough. That is what he does.
It's like, as Aristotle said, The Last Jedi is a bad movie. So to ensure a level of believability, your language must be sufficient for your lowest grade reading level reader, but not to the point of insult. So appeal to the lowest common denominator, but don't make it clear that that's what you're doing. Yeah. Question mark. It must be sufficiently intelligent for your subject material, your genre, your premise, and most importantly, yourself. So I'm intrigued by that, because sufficiently intelligent for your subject material, are there subjects? Someone's just put, imagine being named Movie Bob.
What?
I don't know why that's relevant, but we will cover Movie Bob at some point.
Yeah. It's very strange.
Anyway, I'm feeling that. So anyway, he goes, it must be sufficiently intelligent for your subject material, your genre, your premise, and most importantly, yourself. So I don't really know what he means there, because what subject material would you write about where the intelligence level was lower? Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems
like, I don't get what the point is here.
He's saying like some genres are just inherently like dumber than others? Question mark.
Well, obviously, the genres he likes are objectively more for smarter people.
Well, yeah, because science fiction is for smart people, right?
Yeah, science fiction is for brain geniuses, and if you like, I don't know, whatever movie he doesn't like, then you're some kind of pleb with no brain or something. I'm just trying to work out why that person just said, imagine being named Movie Bob.
Right, Fox, whoever lets Smudboy write a book on writing tips needs to be shamed big time. I think you'll find Smudboy allowed Smudboy to write a book on writing tips. This is a self-published book.
Yeah, it's not. To be fair, it's not like he.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Sorry, I'm just very confused as to what's going on in the chat there.
The Movie Bob comment's throwing me there.
Why bring it up? Very strange. Anyway,
fair enough. Movie Bob is a twat.
Oh no, he is just a massive wankster. Like that,
he's a fucking poo head.
Wow, he just going straight for the jugular there.
In a way, I've got more contempt for Movie Bob than I do for Smudboy.
Oh, I definitely have. Like, Smudboy, I think, is just not a very clever man. I think Movie Bob is actively a bad person.
Yeah, Smudboy's doing the best with what God gave him, But I feel like, Smudboy at least doesn't think that, like, the people who like The Last Jedi should be exterminated. Whereas Movie Bob, I feel like the eugenics talk from Movie Bob is, like, next fucking level,
It's just, he's just the worst. It's astonishing, honestly.
Anyway, stay tuned for that one. We'll definitely cover Movie Bob.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Because he's written a book. You best believe he's written a book. Yeah, Riot Fox. Someone must have enabled it by not telling him no, come on. Which, I agree. The people in his life need to be more honest with him. Anywho. Blah, blah, blah. So, If your audience cannot understand certain complex scientific theories, it is not your duty to provide a glossary or textbook. I'm sorry, I'll read that not wrong. If your audience cannot understand certain complex scientific theories, it is not your duty to provide a glossary or textbook level of definition. Which is interesting, right? Because he started this book with a fucking glossary.
Yeah, and also that is true. And also, I wanted to point out he did say that like the more detail you give, like the better, right? So presumably in Star Trek, when they give some technobabble thing, he believes they should give more detail, right?
Yeah.
And also, like they never talk about anything like that in Star Wars, really.
Yeah, not really. There's no. Oh, I mean, and the one time they did that, everyone hated it, right?
What do you mean?
Well, like, you know, when they had the midichlorians.
Oh, yeah. No, that's true.
Like, trying to explain the Force, like, everyone was like, "That's shit. Don't do that."
Yeah, that's fair.
It's almost like this doesn't make any sense, and it's the ramblings of adult.
Adult. Yeah, you have such a way with words. Yeah,
well, you know, you've got to be a high-minded literary sort to deal with Smudboy. You know, if you're going to spar with an intellectual titan like Smudboy. Yeah, Water says a good point. I feel like the major disagreement is the prescriptivism. Try saying that 3 times fast. If this book was descriptive, then it would be a badly written descriptive piece on how successful or mass subjectively good things written. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, like the issue is he's kind of saying like, yeah, this is the blueprint for all fiction. This is
that's a good point. Yeah, like I mean, if he did just say this is how most movies are written,
stories, right? Like even if it was just how he wrote stories and how he preferred them, that would be better. It'd still be wrong and dumb, but like, you know, it's less wrong than saying this is how stories should be written, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what most of the theories that they do, like the 3-act structure and the like the save the cat and, you know, the monomyth and all that kind of stuff. Like that is generally descriptive of a general trend in media. Right? So if he had just done something like that.
Yeah, Save the Cat, by the way, is shit. Like, if anyone's ever read that, it's the worst. Smudboy probably thinks it's great. I will agree with you, though, Riot Fox, that if your friends come up with a pamphlet such as this, always read it to make sure they're not going to embarrass themselves, as Smud has, and always be honest. I know that it's probably better that that the friends of Smud read this and went, "This is dribble, mate," than allowed him to self-publish it. But to be fair, though, would they think it was drivel? I don't know. You know, I'm sure Lit Devil thinks this is the dog's bollocks if he's read it. Although I don't think he has. But anyway, we're just going to move on. If your audience cannot understand certain complex scientific theories, it is not your duty to provide a glossary or textbook level of definition. Again, he's assuming that this is fiction where complex scientific theories are relevant. But anyway,
I don't know. Like, who gives a shit, honestly?
Yeah, it must still be accessible in some way, so your slowest reader can grasp it, and that your most intelligent doesn't throw your book down over a technicality they disagree with. Wow. Sorry, this just reminded me of a great clip that my friend sent me of. Do you know Christopher Nolan, the film director?
Yes.
I said that as if he's an obscure figure. Chris Nolan, there's an interview with him where they're talking about, I think, Dunkirk. And if you've seen that film, it happens over several temporalities, right? Like it messes around with time quite a lot.
Okay.
Like some characters you're seeing like a couple of hours in their lives. Some characters you're seeing like a week. And some characters you're seeing like an hour. And you're sort of like experiencing, like it cuts between them and then it kind of comes back at the end and you see how it all links up. And there's an interview with some guy who goes like, are you worried that like certain members of the audience might not be able to follow it? And Nolan just pauses for a second and then just goes, nah, fuck it. Which, to be fair, I think is the response, right? Because
like, I mean, honestly, who cares?
Because if people can't follow it, like that, you know, obviously you could argue that some things are, you know, overly convoluted and that's a flaw, right? But again, a subjective flaw, and again, it's like
And if you're making a movie for you, it's like, who cares what like other people might think?
I like Water in the chat. This is Drivel, E&M Drivel, the Drivelator, and the Drivelator says this is shite, man. Oh dear. Yes, it is shite. Anywho, right.
I don't know. The thing I find particularly depressing is to ensure level of ability, your language must be sufficient for your lowest grade reading level reader, but not to the point of insult. Like, what does that mean? Like,
yeah, he's kind of saying like, don't overcomplicate it, which is funny coming from him, right? Because I would say that we're probably both of a relatively high reading level, whatever that means. We both have a decent grasp of language, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
We've read paragraphs upon paragraph of Smudboy's ramblings, and there's been sentences that there's been paragraphs, there's been sentences alone that I've been like, I don't know what that means. Yeah.
That's most of the book. I mean, it does sort of, I don't know, it does sort of seem to be sort of like advocating for talking down to the reader, which is not the first time this has come up.
Yeah. And again, if I was writing this book, and I wouldn't to begin with, right? But if I was, I think what I'd say is, precision of language is important. And I think Smudboy's book does bear that out. Where if you're using kind of imprecise language, that can really confuse people. And if you're kind of like, you have to kind of, again, this is subjective advice. Like there's probably examples you can think of that go against this.
Yeah.
But in general, if you're trying to communicate with an idea to someone, it's probably best to assume that they don't know as much about it as you do. And you have to kind of get the information across to them in a clear way, right? But that said, Smudboy is breaking his own rules here, because he just, like, if this is true, if you need to dumb it down for and like, he doesn't say dumb it down, but that's what he's saying, right?
Yeah, he's basically saying, like, talk down to the audience.
Yeah, if you need to dumb it down for a general audience, then I tell you something, mate, you could get rid of the fucking eggs. You could get rid of all that bollocks, because I don't think anyone knows what that means.
Well, no, you see, that's a clever analogy, with the plebs might understand a bit better.
But I don't. Are the plebs chucking water and oil into the pan at the same time? I just don't know.
So. I mean, they must be.
I don't like the way he frames it as your lowest. What is it? He says, I've lost the thread again because I've been ranting for too long. Yeah, but I don't like the way that he's kind of phrasing it as like your lowest reading level reader.
Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's kind of saying like your dumbest reader, right? Which.
But how would you even quantify that? And also, like, I mean, Smudboy's written a whole book, so he obviously has, quite a grasp of the English language. But it's drivel.
Yeah. It's God, yeah. It's. I don't really like that, because it feels simultaneously patronizing and elitist. Well, hang on, those were the same thing. It kind of feels, it just feels like kind of elitist, really, but in a way where you're assuming that an audience needs to be talked down to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you, as the writer, are the brain genius, sort of sitting atop the throne that is also your brain, and sort of the plebs are sort of lying before you, sort of saying, "Please, Mr. Writer, please." Entertain us, and you say, you plebs, you cannot understand, but allow me to talk down to you in the simplest way I can imagine.
And like, sure, to a certain point, if you're dealing with very complex ideas, you want to simplify it as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
But then again, there's some texts where that's not the case. Like something like that. I don't know if you've seen the movie Primer. It's about time travel.
I've not seen Primer, no.
Like, one of the appeals of that is that, like, it's quite complicated and you need to, like, follow along with it.
I remember back, like, when I was a kid, people were always going about how The Matrix was complicated. Then, like, when I actually got around to seeing it, I was like, it's not at all.
Well, it's kind of layered, I would say, The Matrix, more so than complicated.
Yeah.
Like, it's as complicated. The Matrix is a good example because it's as complicated as you want it to be, right? Like, if you really want to get into the philosophy behind it, you can really go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But if you want to watch it as just, hey, it's an action movie with some cool sci-fi stuff, you can also do that. I mean, that is the Wachowskis' greatest gift, in my opinion, is like they can provide a film that kind of works on every level. And maybe this is what's, to be fair to Smudboy, maybe this is what he's trying to say, right? He's trying to be like, look, not everyone's going to follow along with, you know, the deep philosophy or the concepts you're throwing out there.
Yeah.
So make it work as a compelling story on its own. And like I would say, The Matrix is a good example of that, right? Where like I say, if you're not that interested in the kind of postmodern philosophies behind it, you can still watch it as a cool action movie or a cool sci-fi movie. Yeah. And you're not really missing out that much. But if you do want to kind of plug into those things that the Wachowskis kind of getting at, and like the Wachowskis are much better read than me, and they probably have a lot to say about all of the movies that they've done, right? But so if that's what he's trying to say, then fine. But this whole talk of your lowest reading level reader, your lowest reading ability reader is like, I don't know. That is straying towards movie Bob territory, right? Really
that.
Sorry, I think we had a bit of a glitch.
Yeah, I think we did have a bit of some kind of weird thing there, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, that really, I really don't like that at all. That's really quite, I just hate it, honestly.
Water recommends us some reading in the chat, by the way. He says, oh, by the way, you two host people, so Sheep in the Box and Henchbrain 666, if you want a different perspective on this, read an essay called A Case Against the Character. You might also find it under the name World State Literature. I will definitely check that out, Water. And if you tune in next week, here's a bit of sizzle for you. If you tune in next week, I'll give you my thoughts on it.
Oh, that's fun.
Or maybe not next week, but whenever we do it next.
Yeah.
Anywho, so where did we get to? Right, yeah, so here we go. So, to ensure a level of believability, your language must be sufficient for your lowest grade reading level reader.
Right.
So I read that all wrong, but we've done this. But not to the point of insult. It must be sufficiently intelligent for your subject material, genre, your premise, and most importantly, yourself. If your audience cannot understand certain complex scientific theories, it is not your duty to provide a glossary or textbook level of definition. It must still be accessible in some way so your slowest reader can grasp it, and that your most intelligent doesn't throw your book down over a technicality they disagree with. As undesirable a technique, a throwaway character or scene may be needed just for that purpose, though it is essential for such an idea to be communicated properly anyway. This is inherently difficult to do, but a balance must be achieved between excessive detail and complex perfunctory words. What? In the next chapters, we'll make sure you do not create throwaway anything in your stories. So, first of all, in this paragraph he goes, a throwaway character or scene may be needed just for that purpose, which I think means explaining stuff, right?
Right, yeah.
But then he says, we'll make sure you don't create throwaway anything in your stories. So, which is it, Smud? Is it needed or is it not? Okay. Yeah, and then also, I don't really know what he's going on about here. A balance must be achieved between excessive detail and complex perfunctory words. Again, most of the words in this book are perfunctory, right? Like, yeah, all the time you spend talking about fucking steakhouse is perfunctory. But yeah, I mean, this is why I was looking forward to the verisimilitude rule, because it's so antithetical to everything that Smudboy's done so far in this book that I'm like, yeah, he's talking about like clarity of communication,
and he's very not good at that.
He's also not really talking about verisimilitude that much. He's mostly talking about clarity of communication, which is not the same thing.
Yeah, which is, I mean, like, if you, like, sort of, if the point is to talk down to your audience because they're a bunch of dum-dums, why use a word like verisimilitude in the first place?
Yeah, right. Ugh, what a fool. He goes on to say, context is key. How you write is greater than what. So, not at all relevant to what he was just saying, but...
Okay, fair. Okay. How you write is greater than what? Why? But hang on, notice that he doesn't believe that. Right? Right, like, I mean, he wouldn't believe that if you say, like, how... Like say if like the throne room scene, like if the exact same things happened, but it was written slightly differently or like in a different context to what he wanted, he wouldn't be on board with that, right? Hello? Oh no. Mate, you there? Oh dear. Well, I'm not sure what's going on. Hench, you there? Oh no. Having technical issues again, it appears. That's always fun. Let me see what I can do. Hang on. Apologies, everyone. How's everyone doing while I try and get Henchbrain back?
Hello?
Hello!
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
No idea what happened there. I think that's Discord being weird again.
Fair enough. Waters just said that they think you phased out of existence.
Yeah, I did a little bit. I did. Just fury made me phase out of existence for a minute there. I'm back, though. I'm back. You can't keep a player down.
You can't keep a player down, excellent.
Yeah, what I was saying, though, you were saying he doesn't believe this thing about how you write is greater than what. I'm here to tell you, and the chat, that I am the world's leading Smudboy scholar.
Okay.
And I can't really nail down what he believes on anything, so I wouldn't confidently claim that he believes this or doesn't believe this, to be honest. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, because it does seem that like that's not something he believes at all.
Right, folks. We love a socialist audio moment. Don't worry. Yeah. Anyway, you require proper grammar, proper spelling, proper prose and/or poetry, and a focus on simplicity. Clarity is essential. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Right, okay.
Clarity is essential.
Clarity is essential apart from when he's writing his book about how to write books.
Yeah. No, clarity is essential unless it's Smudboy talking, in which case...
Clarity is...
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's clear that he doesn't have anything to fucking say.
Yeah.
Because he says so much while saying so little. He's kind of the Boris Johnson of story advice, right? It's just, you say as many words as possible and hope that people can kind of figure out the meaning from it.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I'm not sure that's the most flattering comparison Smudboy's ever had, but there you go. So clarity is essential. Form, or how you write, is necessary for content. Show mostly, but tell if you must.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Show mostly, but tell if you must.
Yeah.
What kind of advice is that? That's shit.
I'm glad this has come up, actually, because when we were talking about, I think in the first stream we did, we briefly touched on show, don't tell.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was trying to think of examples of showing rather than telling that I thought were good.
Yeah.
Sorry, telling rather than showing that I thought were good. Because obviously the general rule of storytelling, especially screenwriting, is like show, don't tell. Like, don't have a character say, he's a really evil man. Like, just show it by him being evil, right?
Yeah.
Basically, that's a very oversimplified way of it. But I actually watched a movie recently called The Vast of Night, where it's kind of an alien thriller, I guess, a sci-fi thriller kind of set in the 60s. It's kind of modeled on like the Twilight Zone, kind of like there were a few references to that. But basically the premise is it's like these two people. One's a girl who works at a she's like a switchboard operator,
Right, yeah.
and one's a radio DJ, both like in their late teens, right?
Yeah.
I'm just giving excessive detail here, but basically they pick up on like an alien signal, and the whole thing is they go around talking to people in their town who have experienced these aliens before, right? So like most of the film is just them listening to people describe their experiences with aliens.
Yeah.
And you don't really see much of it. And like there's even a point where the guy is listening to someone who calls in on the radio show talking about like, oh, we saw this weird stuff going on when we were in the military down in Mexico or something like that. Yeah. And like the screen actually fades out a couple of times as this monologue's going on, and like the whole thing is like, yeah, you're supposed to, like, the sense of fear and like dread is being built up by telling you about it rather than showing you it. And you do see the aliens at one point, but it's like very, very brief. And the whole point is like it's about this kind of, like, it's supposed to evoke that kind of feeling of like talking about spooky things with your friends late at night sort of thing. It's like, and that was quite effective as a movie. Like, I barely even registered that like they'd been telling rather than showing for the whole film, you know, until at the end when I was like, oh yeah, I guess this was all kind of, it's just dialogue, this, isn't it? Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I guess a more sort of pop culture-ish example would probably be the Song of Ice and Fire books, where like George R. R. Martin will just refer to characters doing awful things as like foreshadowing for when they show up later on, and it does sort of build sort of a hate for that character or whatever in the in the text, I guess.
If the chat are interested in Henchbrain recommendations, The Vast of Night, very good, very good. Moving on. Where did we get to? Oh, sorry, I've skipped back a page in my Kindle. Because I don't refer to the thing on the chat. Just a bit of technical stuff here. I use a Kindle. I use the Kindle app on my phone. Anyway, that's just me filling time as I try and find my place. So yes, dialogue can be. Oh no, hang on, that's wrong. Oh, what the fuck? Where am I now? Yeah, show mostly, but tell if you must.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't go on about the side character. So fuck you, George R. R. Martin. Don't go on about the side character or that aspect of an object you find attractive, all for the sake of colour or world building. Why would anyone put prose in their book that was just about colour? Just about putting a bit of texture in there? Why would anyone do that?
What?
If it's not relevant to the story and doesn't help you connect with the scene, you need to get rid of it.
That's terrible advice.
Yeah, I mean, it's good advice for like if you're writing an airport thriller or something
this is like the most basic of basic.
But even then, if you read something like Ian Fleming or something like the James Bond books, he's always banging on about like, the food that is on the table. Like, he goes into excessive detail about that, and like, he really wants to set the scene of like stuff that's not strictly relevant,
Yeah.
But just to get you into a mood. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Not that I'm necessarily holding Ian Fleming up as an example of a great writer. Just
you're not a big Fleming fan.
Sorry?
You're not a big Fleming fan.
Well, James Bond is one of those things that I have an interesting relationship to.
Okay.
In that the older I get, the more I'm like, this is fucking problematic. A lot of this stuff, right?
I don't think I've ever actually read one of those books.
Especially the books. The books there's some choice stuff in the books.
Oh dear. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is like Fleming was very much a man of his time. But some of it is a bit beyond the pale.
Fair enough. Okay.
Mostly to do with the treatment of women and stuff like that. Although saying that, I do think that the Bond of the books isn't supposed to be a hero. Like, he's kind of an anti-hero. But this is not the Bond. This is not the Bond stream.
That's fair. Okay.
Water though. Under the Thunder says at Sheep in the Box. Ian Fleming was also very, very racist.
Oh, was it?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Okay, fair.
It is me who was saying that Fleming was good, though. I know it's hard to tell us apart because we're both British men.
That's true. We all sound like Sargon.
We all sound like Sargon. Oh, dear. Ian Fleming was very, very racist. Some of his books that feature black characters are spicy.
Oh, dear. Is it Enid Blyton levels?
A little bit. There is one of his books where, and I'm going to tactfully change the language that Fleming used, where Bond is surprised that a black woman can drive.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Also, Fleming and Bond apparently believed that gay men had no sense of smell.
What?
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Anyway, we're talking enough talk about dead writers who aren't very PC. Okay. Let's get on to living writers who are also not that PC. Okay. But, less so than Fleming. Oh, Under the Thunder was talking to sheep, though. Okay, well, fair enough.
Fucking hell, okay.
Although, yeah, Water says in the chat, the thing that surprises me about Literature Devil is that he is, like, really nice. I've interacted with him a few times and he seems like a decent guy, albeit misled or off his rocker on his ideas.
I mean, he's probably a pleasant person, but he's not a good person, is the way I'd put that. It's like, he's probably perfectly nice, but also he says and believes some terrible things, so...
Yeah. Dear. Here we go. So, yes. Dialogue can be more poetic and liberal, as characters can be as elaborate or simple as their thoughts allow.
Right.
The interactions are key to understanding the plights and feelings they're experiencing. Dialogue is like the poetry found in prose, where a writer can make someone talk nearly any way they like. Talking, walking, and their sense of identity are essential for characterization.
Why is walking essential for the characterization?
Well, because if you walk with powerful strides, you're obviously an alpha Chad. Whereas if you walk, I don't know. I'm trying to justify this. I don't think walking is all that relevant, really. It's the kind of thing an actor might consider when they're playing a character in a film or a play, I suppose. Like the gait of the character. But, I don't think it's necessarily the most... As a writer, I don't know. Because the only time you'd really describe how someone walked into a room is... I guess you might be like, like I say, they powerfully strode into a room to kind of indicate confidence or something like that. But, I don't know. He says, dialogue is like the poetry found in prose, where a writer can make someone talk nearly any way they like. Talking, walking, and their sense of identity are essential for characterization. To be fair, I don't have too much of an issue with this paragraph.
No, I think it's fine.
No, I think he's mostly talking some sense there.
Yeah.
He goes on, how much of your story is dialogue, description, and action? And more importantly, how do you show and tell it? Keep that in mind when addressing your audience. One thing that will come through your prose is your manners. This is how you were raised, how you think of people, how you communicate to people, essentially how you experience them.
What?
I mean, in the case of Ian Fleming, I guess he never met many black people.
Jesus Christ.
Although even that's not true, right? Because he had a house in Jamaica. But anyway, go on.
How do you show and tell? Like, keep in mind that when addressing your audience, one thing that will come through your pose is your manners. Like, what does that even mean? Like, your manners will come... how polite you are? Like, how you're raised? Like, what is this even... I don't get what he's getting at.
Yeah.
How you think of people, how you communicate. I mean, I guess you could say, like, if you're racist, like, as you said. Like,
that'll come through in your writing, I guess. Or something, yeah. But, I don't know what that really means.
I mean, obviously, I guess, is he sort of saying that, like, if you have any personal feelings or any kind of philosophies or sort of prejudices that might sort of take have a part in your, like, obviously, H.P. Lovecraft's famous racism didn't like that was in his writing, but I don't really know what the point he's trying to make here in this achieve verisimilitude chapter, or I don't get what relevance it has.
And I guess as well, like, if you do have a political perspective, that does tend to be somewhat reflected in your fiction, I guess. Like, if you're more left-wing, then, certain kinds of characters are going to be heroes rather than villains.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason someone like Zack Snyder's trying to make the Fountainhead and not, like, I don't know, like Michael Moore.
I'm here for him making the Fountainhead. Because that film, if he ever makes it, will be such a disaster.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, in a way, it's the film that he was born to make.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's pretty clear. But also, like, who wants to go and see the fucking Fountainhead? More. I mean, even more relevant, who wants to see Zack Snyder's The Fountainhead? So what I want him to do is release Zack Snyder's The Fountainhead and have it be crushed by the free market because no one wants to see it. That'll be fitting, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that'll be a worthy end for Zack Snyder's The Fountainhead.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost as funny as I say funny. It's almost as fitting as the fact that Ayn Rand herself, towards the end of her life, was living off government handouts.
Yes, I do enjoy that a lot.
Which that just tells you all you need to know, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
about her philosophies. But anyway, yeah, one thing that will come through your prose is your manners. This is how you are raised, how you think of people, how you communicate to people, essentially how you experience them. Through this, as you put your thoughts down, you will indirectly create your own style, and it is how your readers will be able to identify your writing.
Yeah.
Style and structure are synonyms, no they're not. This book will provide you with an idea for structure. Sorry, did you say something there, Sheep?
No, I was just saying they're really not synonyms at all. Like, what's he even going on about? Like,
yeah. Yeah, style and structure are synonyms. This book will provide you with an idea for structure on how to compose your writing in your style effectively, but your style should be all your own.
what?
Your style should follow ironclad objective rules, but should also be unique to you.
Hang on. So, style and structure are completely different things, right?
Yeah.
And Smudboy believes that there should be extremely rigid structures. So,
Yes.
like, what's he going on about here? Like, what's the point he's trying to make? Like,
Well, style and structure are totally different anyway, right? Like, it's not. It's just
totally
not in any way the
different
same thing. Sorry, just to respond to the chat, Alexandria Yeats says, does say, why do I recognise the name Zack Snyder? So for your benefit, Zack Snyder is the director of 300, the Watchmen adaptation, and he did Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and he's like very
Sucker Punch, which is one of the worst films.
Oh yeah, so how could I forget about Sucker Punch? What a film that is. I mean, he's a creator where, like Smudboy, I have this bizarre relationship with him where, like, I kind of will watch anything Zack Snyder puts out because I'm sort of fascinated by the mindset of the man. Because he has this weird kind of Randian objectivist philosophy. But yeah, it's always couched in this weird comic book shit. And anyway, he's an odd fellow.
He is to movies what Frank Miller is to comic books, basically.
Yes, which is appropriate given that he did the 300 movie. But yes,
Alexander Reese just said, "Oh, that fuckhead." Brilliant.
Yeah. His dream project for a long time has been to do an adaptation of The Fountainhead. Ayn Rand novel.
He will get around to doing it at some point, I'm sure.
God, I hope he does. But Soot on the Ice says, have you ever seen any of the Atlas Shrugged movies? Most of the cast didn't want to come back for the sequels.
I didn't even know there were movies.
Yes, there's been recent movies. I've not seen them because life's too short. But I gather there are 3 of them, which is relevant for some reasons. Reasons that we'll get into at a later date. But yes, we'll move swiftly on. Your style should be all your own. Content. What are you writing about? Who are you writing for? Complex ideas require complex descriptions.
Right.
Big things require big explanations.
Okay.
Big reveals require big setups.
Right.
Intricate plots require layers of expositions.
I'm not necessarily against... I mean, apart from the weird sort of grammar there, and the require layers of expositions. But I don't know, I'm not 100% against what he's said here. Right? Like, I mean...
Yeah, I see what he's... Yeah, complex ideas... Yeah. I get what he's saying. Like, you know, you have to put in the work to make sure your stuff's coming across to the audience as you want it to. Yeah. He goes on to say, if you're writing a diabolical mastermind challenging the hero by their pure genius, so me, a henchbrain, I'm a diabolical mastermind, and I'm challenging Smud, who is the hero.
Okay.
But yes, if you're writing a diabolical mastermind challenging the hero by their pure genius, who has thought out 10 steps ahead... Sorry, that's confusingly... There's a comma there that shouldn't be there, I don't think. If you're writing a diabolical mastermind challenging the hero by their pure genius, who has thought out 10 steps ahead, can you... So, what he's saying there is... sorry, we'll go on, because that sentence is a bit poorly worded, but we'll go on.
I think if we get to the end of this...
So, can you conceive of such a dastardly intricate plan that no normal person could solve? You're going to have to in order for them to be believable, and that requires planning before writing a story about it. How will you explain their steps in series? Is it too complex that no reader could conceive, or too simple that no reader could believe events happened as such? Why? Establish a character's personality traits, figure out what is sufficient for them, and you will never overwrite or underwrite an idea.
I mean, I guess this is well, I don't know if it's directly referencing it, but there's that whole thing about how the BBC Sherlock TV show is, I think it's often described as being a show about smart people written by stupid people. Right? In the idea that like they're writing a genius, but they're not sort of doing the legwork to sort of make them a believable genius, because obviously they're not geniuses, you know?
I mean, that's always going to be an issue with writing a character like that, I suppose, is that you have to make it convincing that he's so brilliant. I mean, I would say that's a fair descriptor of like the later seasons of Sherlock, because since we're using Sherlock as a bit of a case study here, the early seasons are actually a good example of how to write a smart character, because they've clearly just done the plot mechanic work to be like, well, what is a clue that Sherlock needs to pick up at this time?
Yeah.
And then how could he pick it up in a way that someone else couldn't? Like, there's quite a few good examples of that in the early seasons. But and that's also, to be clear, speaking of Sherlock Holmes, an issue that Arthur Conan Doyle had, right, is that after the first few books, he was like, I'm not that bright. I can't keep writing this genius character and finding new ways for him to be a genius. So yeah, I get what he's saying. Like, in order to write a character who is hyper intelligent, you sort of need to be able to write hyper intelligence yourself.
Yeah, like I'm not sort of disagreeing with him here. I do think that like, if you're going to write a character like that, it's very difficult to do unless you put a lot of work in to make that person like believably really smart, right?
Yeah, and I think that is always going to be an issue with stories where, as Smudboy was kind of describing, like the villain is this kind of genius game player, because you need to write it in such a way that the heroes don't look stupid for being foiled by the villain.
Yeah,
which is always kind of an issue with a lot of these things. Or you need to write it in such a way that like kind of how they do in the Hannibal TV show. Have you seen that? Where it's like Hannibal is not just a genius; he's almost this like diabolical force, right? Like they make it so that, you know, he is this kind of, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with this. Like I get what he's saying. It's tough to write that kind of thing. Again, I feel like we're talking about writing in a very specific genre-y way. So like all of this is kind of,
it does to me, it does sort of come across as kind of superhero-y,
yeah. Like when he's describing like this villain that's 10 steps ahead, I'm kind of thinking about like kind of the Joker in The Dark Knight, I guess, because that was one of the criticisms of that, right? Is people were like, he supposedly is this kind of anarchic force, but he's always like 10 steps ahead of everyone. But also, if you actually boil down what his plan is, it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
Like all this stuff of like he wants to get captured so that he can get out, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And that's not just a trope in The Dark Knight, but obviously that's, you know, a famous bit of The Dark Knight. Yeah, I kind of, it's interesting because for my personal taste, if you're going to write this kind of chess master villain, I prefer them to not be 10 steps ahead, but be someone who's kind of like a good improviser, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
so I think
like that makes a lot more sense.
What Hannibal Lecter is like in most adaptations, where he's like, he knows how to manipulate people and he knows how to kind of set things up for himself. But ultimately, like in Silence of the Lambs, when he breaks out of the prison, that's not because of some genius plan that he's laid out. It's because like the guards fucked up, basically.
Yeah.
And he exploits that immediately. And like I think that's the better way to write this kind of mastermind villain, is like, it's not that they're so far ahead of everyone else that's the issue. It's like they're so good at exploiting other people's weaknesses.
Well, it's the Batman problem, right? Is that like everyone wants, like, Batman is canonically this like super genius who's like 10 steps ahead of everyone else, but also he's written by ordinary people who like aren't. So a lot of the time, like Batman stories end up being, oh, I have this specific gadget that I can use to... Yeah, and like, I don't. Again, I'm not to get too much into like Batman lore, but like, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the whole Batman is so prepared for every eventuality thing. Yeah, it has basically become a meme. Like, like back in the day when I used Reddit, which I don't anymore. But when I used to, I think there was one called like "Who Would Win," like as a subreddit, and just like if ever you brought Batman up, it's like, oh well, you know, if you give him like enough preparation time, he can like defeat Superman, or you can like defeat Goku.
But do you know what the real answer to that is? Of course, who would win, Batman or Goku?
Yeah.
Depends on who's writing it.
Well, yeah,
Whoever the writers wanted to win would win.
yeah, exactly. Like,
There's no way to objectively measure that shit.
oh yeah,
And I know that those who would win things are mostly for fun, but like, it does bother me when people treat it like it's like fucking baseball stats or whatever, because it's like, well, it's whoever's writing it. If it's a Batman story that Goku cameos in, probably Batman's going to win. Or, vice versa. If Batman shows up in Dragon Ball Z, probably Goku's going to win.
Oh, Batman actually did show up in an episode of Scooby-Doo. I wanted to put that out there.
Yes, he's also cross-pathed with the Ninja Turtles.
Has he? I did not know that.
Yeah, Under the Thunder, this is relatable to me. Yeah, I really like playing incredibly intelligent characters in RPGs, even though at best I'm slightly better than average. Yeah, no, I know that pain. I mean, you might be talking about video game RPGs. I'm a D&D player myself, and I do tend to go for characters who are more intelligent than myself. But the good thing about D&D is that you have wisdom and intelligence as stats, so you can just roll stuff and the DM tells you things that you should already know. But yes, that's always good there. Anywho, we've got.
Oh, he's talking about genre next. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I know. We never stop talking about genre. This is always how it goes.
Okay.
Where did we get to there?
Writing for a genre.
Yeah, hang on one sec. So yeah, we got past the keep that in mind. Your manners, style and structure are synonyms. Yeah. So content : what are you writing about? Who are you writing for? Complex idea. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong page here, aren't I?
Yeah, it's the next page.
Yeah, sorry. So yes, can you conceive of such a dastardly intricate plan that no normal person can solve? You're going to have to in order for them to be believable, and that requires planning before writing a story about it. How will you explain their steps in series? Is it too complex that no reader could conceive, or too simple that no reader could believe events happened as such? Why? Establish a character's personality traits, figure out what is sufficient for them, and you will never overwrite or underwrite an idea.
I'm not entirely sure what that means. Like, figure out what's sufficient for them. What's that?
Yeah, I'm just going to breeze past that because it makes no sense to me.
Okay, fair enough.
Writing for a genre? What does that genre require? So again, we're in this thing where genre is this solid thing where you need to.
Again, as someone mentioned earlier, it is prescriptivist rather than descriptivist. And it's just sort of what he reckons the genre is,
But this is great. I love this. Writing for a genre? What does that genre require? Science fiction needs some science. Science fiction needs some science. What do we think?
Needs some science. Is that even true?
Yeah, I mean, science fiction is a pretty broad umbrella term, right?
And so is science, actually.
Oh,
I think about
true.
it. Like,
True.
What counts as science?
Say you can have science fiction that's just about like 1984 is often described as science fiction, but as far as I remember, because it's kind of like dystopian sci-fi, I guess. But there's not really anything in it that's like.
It's supposed to be just like. Well, I don't know. I guess there's technology with the view screens and everything.
Yeah, I suppose you could argue though as well, like social sciences are a science, right? So in that regard, 1984 is kind of like a sociological science fiction. I don't know. So that's that. Science fiction needs some science. It needs a conflict within a futuristic scenario where humanity and technology intersect.
No, it doesn't have to be futuristic at all.
Because like steampunk would be science fiction, right?
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like this is the problem with genre, right? Is that you can't nail it down and say like what makes science fiction, because if you say it has to be futuristic, technically Star Wars isn't. It's sci-fi because it's set a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with genre in general. Is like using it as this kind of ironclad thing. It's just they're mostly umbrella terms. Like science fiction covers a lot of stuff. People mostly use it to distinguish it from fantasy, but even then, the two intersect so much that it's basically meaningless, right? Like science fiction is just kind of fantasy where there's scientific explanations rather than magical ones, I guess. Like, it's kind of.
And then obviously you have got something like Star Wars where it has both.
Yeah, where it's just both. And as I say, like something like if you were writing like a steampunk story, Like, would that count as science fiction? Because that's using technology. Because there's not necessarily like magic in that.
No, it's like future technology. Well, no, it's
Yeah.
like past technology that's used for something different, right? And like,
Yeah.
And, so, and again, when you talk about like sort of melding those genres, you'll talk about obviously we talked about like Star Wars, which has both in them, but it has a stronger sort of focus on the sci-fi end. And then you've got something like later Terry Pratchett books, which have like steam trains and things in them. Despite the fact that it's sort of a magical world, or like Narnia, I think at the later books has like an industrial revolution or something. So it's like it sort of mixes the two, and it's just I don't know. I guess like what counts. Like, his ideas of genre are just bad. It's my takeaway from this.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Science fiction needs some science. It needs a conflict. So yeah, let's just break down this bit. It needs a conflict within a futuristic scenario where humanity and technology intersect and are questioned.
I don't think that's really true.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing of humanity and technology intersecting is obviously a big theme in science fiction. Like, there's a lot of stuff about technology and all that.
But you can have a science fiction story that's like just set in the future. But
what about like Black Mirror? That's typically referred to as sci-fi, right? And that's mostly set in kind of alternate present.
Alternate present or very near future,
Yeah, and it's kind of... I mean, I would mostly describe Black Mirror as like satire rather than science fiction outright. Like,
but then again, it's probably like science fiction satire, right?
Yeah, and again, these two things are not mutually exclusive.
And then you've got like some that are more sci-fi, like well, just look at the first season of Black Mirror, like the one that was on the BBC originally, where like the first episode isn't really even sci-fi. It's just like
at all. It's about a man fucking a pig.
It's just about a man fucking a pig. And then the second one is explicit sci-fi. It's like in a dystopian future where people like ride exercise bikes for money and and like it's just horrible. But like that is more explicitly sci-fi, more speculative, and it's more sort of criticism.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because you do hear more and more these days, like a distinction between science fiction and speculative fiction.
Yeah,
which I think is interesting. Not really sure how I'm going to tie that back into Smudboy here, but what I will say is, like this is the issue with him taking genre as like these strict codes that you have to follow, is that it just isn't. Like, the more you break it down, the more you find examples that don't quite fit or kind of ride the line between two different genres.
Yeah.
Or like in the case of Black Mirror, where it's like it is science fiction, but it's serving a different purpose to like Star Trek, for example. I don't know. Anyway, we'll breeze on. Well,
again with Star Trek, I don't know if like it does do it a lot, but a lot of episodes don't really question the like humanity and technology intersecting. And like in our world, humanity and technology intersect. In the modern world.
Yeah, true. So if you were writing a story that was just set in the modern world, like we referenced the film You've Got Mail last week.
Oh, God.
Is that a science fiction story?
That's true. It does
technology intersecting with humanity.
Yeah, and so there's a great music video as well called "Romantic and Jackass" by the Russian Village Boys, which discusses.
That is the most Matt music recommendation I've ever heard in my life. The Russian Village Boys.
The Russian Village Boys, and it does. It's sort of.
Shout out to our Lovecraftian entity friend who has just entered the chat.
Who is also probably into Russian Village Boys because we have similar music tastes.
Yes.
But anyway, in this music video, it sort of discusses, it sort of, I guess it explores sort of Zoom dating and sort of dating into a pandemic. So I guess you could say technically that that music video is science fiction.
Yeah, exactly. Again, this is the issue with his genre, his kind of prescriptive take on genre is like, it just doesn't really make sense, does it? Anyway, we'll breeze on. Although someone called YY says, It makes sense CHUDs want to play into genre essentials or whatever you want to call it. It is a very pro-corporate position because genres are pushed by publishers to delineate markets. Yes, correct.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. And our Lovecraftian entity friend says Russian village boys are amazing. So that is very on brand for him. I have it on good authority that most Lovecraftian beings do like to get down to some Russian village boys. Anywho, does it need hard science with... sorry, I'll kind of reel back a few sentences. Science fiction needs some science. It needs a conflict within a futuristic scenario where humanity and technology intersect and are questioned. Does it need hard science with highly detailed jargon of a cad? Jargon-oriented descriptions, or is it soft science with a focus on drama and plot? Fantasy stories need proper setup to explain where you are in the universe, and that may take entire chapters to describe one setting. Give what is sufficiently needed and move on. Explain your ideas as clearly and accurately as possible at first. Then go back and see if you can do away with excess words. Less is more. So again, can we just acknowledge Smudboy saying, go back and see if you can do away with excess words. Less is more. This motherfucker wrote a multiple-page glossary where he kept fucking going on about eggs. It got to the point where he compared something to the fucking Chalazay of an egg. And this guy is trying to tell me, do away with unnecessary words, less is more. Get fucked.
Also, can we point out that that Smudboy made a 4-hour-long video about one of my videos that was 15 minutes long?
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely the king of less is more, isn't he?
Yeah, can we just can we remember this? The runtime of 4 hours in response to
I agree with the chat. Under the Thunder saying, I fucking hate genre essentialism. Essentialism is bad. Strong agree. Riot Fox, abolish genres, only fun, let's go. Giraffe and the black flag. I think Riot Fox has taken on the giraffe as a symbol of anarchism.
That's fair. Yeah, I can respect that. But yeah, the idea of fucking this guy talking about less is more when his whole career is like tearing other people's YouTube videos down for hours and hours at a time. Like, don't get me wrong, we're also doing that with his book, but we're not telling anyone to do less is more.
Yeah, we're not claiming that less is more. Oh dear. Yeah, Riot Fox. Ironically enough, the eggs were the most fun part. By the way,
true.
Yes, they were. But don't worry, we are going to move back into the steakhouse by the time we get to Rule 2.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
Which we might not. How are we doing for time, by the way? What is it? 10 to 5. Okay. Yeah,
that's all right. That's fine.
We can get into some Rule 2 because we've nearly finished Rule 1. And to be honest, I've got to the point with Smudboy where I don't really care if we just cut him off mid-chapter, to be honest. Because it's not like it makes any more or less sense when we don't do that.
Fair, okay, I can respect that.
Yeah. When we started this, I was trying to give his words the proper respect, but he's broken me.
That's fair.
Anywho, fantasy stories need proper setup to explain where you are in the universe, and that may take entire chapters to describe one setting. Give what is sufficiently needed and move on. Explain your ideas as clearly and accurately as possible at first. Accurately is an interesting term to use when you're describing a fantasy world, but anyway.
Yeah, like how can it... Like, if you're making the story up, or the setting up, how can it be accurate? Like, you're the one who determines whether or not it's accurate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess unless you're making a sequel and you want to make sure you don't contradict yourself.
Before you skip, this is our Lovecraftian friend. Before you skip a chapter, can you elaborate on the meaning of believable steak? No, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know anything about steak, but I know that Smudboy definitely doesn't know anything about steak.
I think he's got a very specific steak order, actually.
You think so?
He strikes me as a guy who he has a very specific steak order and a very specific whiskey order, you know?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Under the Thunder, I agree. Don't use entire chapters to describe the setting. Info dumps are boring. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Objectively correct. destroyed him with fact and logic. No, I do agree with that though. Yeah, like this is one thing that really puts me off a lot of fantasy books is that there will just be like info dump after info dump, and I'm a bit like, look, just get to the story, get to the characters, and we can figure out the rest from there.
Well, I quite like I don't know, like if it's done in a particularly like if it's done in a way that makes sense within the story, or if it's our Lovecraftian friends pointed out that he does a Donald Trump and puts ketchup on his well done steaks.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess the counterpoint to this is Douglas Adams and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where like every few chapters you will put in like an excerpt from this book, but it is usually very humorous and.
Yeah, and it's usually a bit wrong as well, isn't it? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, because the whole point is that the book is sort of a bit shit.
Yeah, Under the Thunder. I've been meaning to check out Brandon Sanderson's books because Mrs. Hench has read a few of them and has a few of them, but they're all kind of like random installments from various series he's done. So yeah, if you could in the chat recommend me some Brandon Sanderson to start with.
I've actually got a Brandon Sanderson book. I think it's the first in one of his series. If you want to have it, you can have it. But
yeah,
I've only read the one book, and then
I've heard about him. It sounds like the kind of thing I would enjoy. But
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I think Smudboy likes Brandon Sanderson actually. But anyway, I'm pretty sure I've heard him shout Sanderson out. But anyway, we'll move on. Blah 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 blah. Less is more. Writing for yourself is the idea, but which is weird. Sorry, I know I keep interrupting myself mid-sentence, but he's saying here that writing for yourself is the idea, but he's always banging on about the audience. So,
well, if you see, he contradicts himself in the next half of that sentence, which is, "But you're ultimately here to please your audience."
Yeah.
Just like
the full sentence is: writing for yourself is the idea, but you're ultimately here to please your audience.
Well, which is it? You can't
your ideas, all within a genre that people have expectations over. So I will just finish that little paragraph. Just make it so Joe Blow can understand you.
Joe Blow is that definitely sounds like the name of his drug dealer. Honestly,
I think Joe Blow is like an Americanish phrase of like Joe Blogs, basically.
Oh yeah, in the UK we'll say Joe Blogs. Is that a thing? Okay, I thought Joe Blow sounds to me like what you'd say if you're a drug dealer in your phone has, like Timmy
Joe
the
Blow
Powder Man or whatever.
Yeah, Joe Blow over here is either a guy who sells you coke in a pub toilet, or he sucks you off in a pub toilet.
Fair enough.
Or both. But no, I think it's equivalent to Joe Blogs.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's.
Which, for the chat's benefit, is a Britishism, basically meaning any old dickhead. So yeah, you'd go like, "Oh, make it so Joe Blogs can understand your book," So this is a really interesting thing here. So writing for yourself is the idea, but you're ultimately here to please your audience, all for the notoriety of your ideas. So we've kind of all within a genre that people have expectations over. Like we know his thoughts on genre expectations, so we won't go too much into that. But what is this thing he keeps bringing up about the notoriety of ideas?
I don't know. It's very strange because it sort of implies that he thinks he should be like as controversial as possible. But like he's not really all that controversial. He's just, like in his videos that aren't just EFAP knockoffs, he's just a Geeks and Gamers knockoff. It's not, it doesn't really do anything.
Notoriety in the sense of like fame, though. Like, is he just saying like the whole point of writing is to get people to? I mean, I guess he is because he was talking about the writers want attention earlier, wasn't he?
I guess so. Yeah.
What was he saying earlier? Let me see if I can find the quote. Yeah, he was saying that the writer is playing a trick on the reader. Pay attention to me, they say. So I guess when he says notoriety, he just means literally like eyeballs on your work, I guess, which to some degree is what you'd want. But like, I don't know.
It's just a weird way of putting it, I guess.
But he goes on. Everyone knows they're about to consume a piece of media. Make them get lost in it in the easiest, most consumable, most inviting way. Make them want to stay in your world as long as there are pages in the book. And you'll be glad to hear this, Matt. You'll be glad to hear this chat. He's going to mention the steakhouse.
Oh yeah.
So he says, make them want to stay in your world as long as there are pages in the book. If you're opening up a steakhouse, you better make your clientele some believable steak, even if you're faking it.
What the fuck? Okay,
So
right. Before we go on to the fucking steak thing, like, can we just Like, so, like, everyone, like, make them get lost in it. Like, he doesn't tell us how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Or is the point that you have to make it believable, and that's how people get lost in it?
Yeah. Again, it's his advice of like, how do I write better? Just write it better.
Yeah,
like,
it's just
he's not telling you how to make your ideas believable. He's just telling you that you do make your ideas believable. Like, how do I make people believe my story? Well, you have to write believably. You know?
It's just yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say Under the Thunder says start with Final Empire, the Final Empire, or Atlantis. So will do. And our Lovecraftian friend says Joe Blow sounds like a person made entirely of cocaine. But yeah, our
I think
Lovecraftian
that's Stephen Crowder, isn't it?
Said, yeah. Our Lovecraftian friend says also, how can you even make a fake steak? How can you fake a steak? Make it out of turkey ham or something?
Well, I guess like vegan steaks are a thing, right? They're made of like beans and stuff.
But like, I don't think you'd go into a standard steakhouse and then they just assume you wanted a vegan steak.
That's true. Yeah.
That's not what's going to happen there, is it?
And also, there's a lot more effort, right? Because they're more difficult to source. But I just, yeah. If you're opening up a steakhouse, you better make your clientele some believable steak. Like, why doesn't he just say good steak?
Yeah, because it's got to be. Yeah, this is his thing about the insistence on using these fucking food metaphors, right? Is that like they don't connect to anything because they're not good metaphors.
It's just, you better make your clientele some believable steak. Like, what? They have to believe it's a steak, or either it's a steak or it's not, right?
I mean, I've not eaten steak for many years, but I don't think I've ever eaten a steak and gone, "Oh, I don't believe that's a steak." Call the chef in. Get the chef over here. I want him to
like mashed potatoes. Yeah,
I want him to prove to me empirically that is a fucking steak, or I will riot.
I just don't get it at all. If you're like, I can understand like maybe like if just said good steak, right? But then he says even if you're faking it, like how do you again? Unless he's talking about
precisely.
Unless he's talking about like one of those Impossible burgers and stuff like that. But again, why would you do that if you're a steak restaurant?
Again, the issue with this is that running a steakhouse and writing, say, a novel are completely different things with different sets of expectations.
I guess the thing is, he's not even using like the best metaphors, because you could say, you know, make sure that you're like that you're good at making steaks, right? So if you have a steak restaurant and someone comes along, God, Ned Pat on steak.
Brilliant.
Sorry, shout out to chat. But yeah, no, I
just want to shout out the chat as well for putting up with us today. We're even more like manically tangential than we were last time.
Somehow.
We've really been off on one today.
But yeah, it's just... Yeah, so like... Yeah, sorry. Why is he going on about like a believable steak? And like so he should be just saying like, if you can make...
Sorry, I'm laughing at the chat again. Under the Thunder says, this steak tastes more like soggy potato chips and soy.
And as we all know from Mark Collett, oven chips are a sign of the Jewish takeover of the West or something.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, Mark Collett, he's a weird Nazi. He used to be in the BNP, and he made a YouTube video about how McCain oven chips having a black person and a gay couple in one of their adverts.
Now you've said that. No, yes, I do know what you're referring to. Yes, because there was that McCain's advert that had the dared to have a non-white person eating oven chips.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, which obviously is the sign of the Jewish oligarchy rising to power or some such nonsense.
Yeah, he decided to back it up because like of the three like CEOs of the company, like one of them was Jewish or something. It's just yeah. He's just a bit of a he's not all there.
Wasn't there a controversy recently as well of the Sainsbury's advert had, like the Christmas advert had like a black family in it?
Yeah, there's a whole thing about people saying, oh, you know, it doesn't represent me, or it's like it's alienating. And I think the Aldi advert had like fucking vegetables and shit in it as people.
Yeah, sentient vegetables, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, right? Like, you know, it's definitely true that in Britain, at least, like advertisers generally go for more diverse casting in their adverts. So you'll see a lot of like, if it's a product aimed at families, you will see a kind of an increase of like mixed race families, right? Yeah. And that's that's just, I'm stating that as a fact with no emotion behind it at all. That is a fact. And like, I am sure that this is a boardroom decision, right? Of being like, well, Britain's more diverse now. We need to try and appeal this product to as many people as possible. So like, that is the decision. So when you see these people kind of going on like, oh, it's the woke police or whatever, it always makes me go like, but you understand that they're just trying to sell their products, right?
Yeah,
like,
and also because they want the like it's like woke capitalism or whatever it's called.
Yeah, and like, it's such a non-controversy. I don't understand how people can get upset by it, because it's like, look, guess what? Black people exist, and sometimes they eat oven chips, especially in Britain, because that's what we eat in Britain.
Yeah, that's basically our entire diet, to be fair.
And like, surely you'd think the BNP types would like that, because that shows they're integrating into society, right? Whereas like, if they're eating, non-British foods, that's apparently offensive as well.
Oh, did you see? We're going on a complete tangent now, but did you see? I read a thing recently where Lauren Southern.
Yes.
Apparently, she dated someone who refused to eat ketchup because it wasn't white or something. It wasn't a white food.
Sorry, what?
I think it was like it wasn't American or something. Anyway, she dated a guy who refused to eat ketchup because it was originally from India or something. I don't actually know where it's from originally, but
yeah, I don't know about that. That's mad. That's mad. And fuck Lauren Southern and fuck the BNP and fuck people who get upset by this kind of stuff, because it's like, I just don't understand. I don't understand that mentality. I don't understand how you can see just a family who are trying to flog Sainsbury's products to you and go, well, they don't have exactly the same skin tone as me, therefore I feel attacked. Like, what the fuck is that, you fucking childish person? Sorry, I'm getting quite het up here, but to be fair, it's a good thing to get het up about, really, isn't it? Racism.
Yeah, no, here you go. Here's the excerpt from some article that was written about Southern. It just says, in appearance, Hutchison, who was her ex-boyfriend, is the caricature of the Aryan ideal, has undercut, known in the alt-right as the fasci, short for fascist, and his fit, thick, soldier-like frame gave him a Teutonic air. He and Sullivan decided to go out to dinner and to let me film them. Hutchison refuses to eat food originally from non-white countries, such as ketchup, whose origins are in China, so the two, facing limited restaurant options, chose the British-style Oxley Public House in Toronto's Yorkville neighbourhood.
Good Lord. Well, there you go. You can't have ketchup because it's from China. I just want to give a shout out to water. To be fair, sentient vegetables does accurately represent the Tory voting population.
True.
They're from water. And yeah, under the thunder, what's wrong with having mixed race families in ads? Absolutely nothing. Like that I was trying to make that point quite clumsily. Like, yeah, fuck ads and fuck the capitalism behind it. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, who fucking cares? Who cares? Like, and also, they're so selective about what it is that upsets them, right? Because fucking Lenny Henry's been flogging Premier Inn for years, and that's apparently fine for a black man to sell.
I don't understand it, because it is weird. It does seem like we have become more racist as a country, which is very disturbing. Britain has always been pretty racist. Yeah, but it does seem like it's. It did get better for a while, and now I'd say it's worse now than it was, say, like 15 years ago.
I think people are more outspoken about it, and I think a lot of that is social media.
Maybe.
Because to be fair, like, in fairness, like, there are, online news outlets that, like, their job is to make controversies seem bigger than they are, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know how many people were genuinely complaining about that Sainsbury's advert, really. But, you're going to see it reported as masses upon masses of people complained about this. Because they do the same when it's kind of like, the quote-unquote SJWs getting quote-unquote triggered about something, right? Like, it will be like a couple of people on Twitter like, oh, this is offensive. But then you'll see articles that are saying, like, the left is coming for insert thing.
Yeah, no, that's true, actually. Yeah, they do that classic thing of they show several tweets and each of them has, like, 2 likes each because they're, like, from nobodies on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, what they're not telling you is the 4 tweets they selected were the only 4 tweets about this issue.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe it is that. Maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic.
I mean, the thing is, like, we live in a fairly diverse area, so I feel like this kind of issue isn't really a thing. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I've really met anyone in my life face to face who was like, I'm a white supremacist and this is what I think. Like, I've definitely met people who, you know, generally of the older generation who are not as PC as you'd like, maybe. But I don't think I've really met people who are like, actually get het up about this kind of stuff, which is not to say that they don't exist. They obviously do.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, I think it is dependent on area as well. Like, because
well, I mean, obviously, without like doxing us, like we are both from quite a diverse area, so I don't know. I guess on the one hand, you will get a lot more racists, but also they're like you like to live in like a sort of area like this. You kind of have to like get on with people of other races, you know.
Mm. Yeah, our Lovecraftian friend is right. It's not necessarily more of it so much as the traffic screamers having a more accessible audience. Yeah, that's true. Definitely when we were younger, like this stuff probably existed, but to the same level that it does now. But it's just, yeah, people have more of a platform to share their weird views, you know. Yeah, Under the Thunder, I think, is speaking the truth as well. I think we're going through a period of backlash where bigotry is going through a period of being beaten back, and bigots are knowing that, and they're being a lot more vocal. Yeah, I think that's right to some extent. I think you're definitely seeing a lot of that with like American commentary at the moment, where because you know, I'm not pro-Biden by any stretch of the imagination, but because the Trump supporters are feeling like their Death Star is being attacked, so to speak, they are kind of crawling out of the woodwork. Do you know what I mean? And they are being more vocal than they would normally be. Yeah, Water, you're probably right there. It's gotten worse. That feels like a very white standpoint. Yeah, you're probably right about that on some level. And Water goes on to say, but the virtue signaling narrative has smuggled racism through the back door of people's minds. Yeah, I think all this stuff contributes to that wider issue. And you are probably right about that, actually, that, you know, for me and Sheep, we're both Caucasian men. I think it's, you know, it's very easy for us to say, oh, it's gotten worse, when actually what it probably is, it's just gotten more visible to us.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Which, you know, it's probably always been as bad as it is now, which is a depressing thought.
Yeah, I mean, when I don't know, I guess when I think about it, it's just sort of, you wouldn't really have heard about this sort of thing previously, but obviously, you know, in the 80s, you know, you had the National Front and all
well,
those
yeah. The 80s was, you know, the time of like skinheads and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that was during Thatcher's reign of terror. But yeah, I think as well, the thing about it is like, I think some of I think Water is quite right about the white standpoint. I think some of it is that in Britain we tend to kind of, as a culture, tend to kind of overlook these things, like it's seen as like impolite to talk about.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely a big issue that I think British society, even particular from like American society, is going through at the moment, is this thing of like, actually we do need to address our kind of colonial legacy, the racism that's like an undercurrent of our society, the classism that's an undercurrent of our society.
Yeah, and then obviously the conservative backlash to a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think this is going on, and I think for a lot of people, even on the working class level, like it's always been seen as, well, you don't, you know, you mind your business and you don't think about that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly my experience, right? Is that people are in Britain, there's this very kind of like, this is where that thing of the British stiff upper lip comes from, right? Like it's that kind of, where you just take it as it comes and you just kind of carry on. Whereas I think, you know, our generation and younger are kind of going, well, actually, let's not do that. And obviously we're talking in very general terms here, but like the kind of younger generations are kind of saying, like, well, actually, let's not do that. Let's actually talk about it, because this stuff is going on. It is an undercurrent in our society. And like, as much as we want to ignore it, we can't anymore, you know? And we shouldn't have in the first place, is the other key thing.
I agree, for sure. Yeah.
This got very heavy. I can't believe that we were talking about an hour ago, we were talking about clangers being a fascist ethno state, and now we're talking about the actual fascism that's the undercurrent of our society. But there you go. And all of that was inspired by Smud's book.
Somehow all of that was inspired by Believable Steak.
I know. Believable Steak. You'd think that was going to be one of our quirky little asides, but it became very heavy. Under the Thunder, yeah, I agree about the transphobes are being loud, because they're desperate and they know their views are becoming unacceptable. Yeah, I think that's quite right. I think you definitely see that in the case of people like, she who would not be named, J.K. Rowling. And Graham Linehan to some degree, where like they're these kind of like privileged white liberals who have always had their opinion listened to, and now that one of their opinions is pretty fucking unacceptable to most people, or to a lot of people, to enough people that it's an issue for them. I think, you're right. You're kind of seeing this thing where they dig in and they kind of, what's the word? They double down, because that's the thing as well. I think there is this unfortunate backlash against a lot of the trans rights stuff. I was going to say particularly in this country, but it's probably true in America as well.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, there's a lot more. I'd say there's a lot more institutional transphobia here than. Or at least it's more sort of based. It's more sort of across the political spectrum, whereas I think in the US it's more like the conservatives, like obviously aren't a huge fan of trans people, but it's mostly sort of an extension of their weird homophobia. Whereas here, there's a lot of we have a lot of TERFs and stuff, and there's a lot of things where it's sort of like trans rights stuff will be framed through the lens of like women's rights or something like that, and it'll actually be a lot of the time feminists. It'll be sort of second wave feminists all the time who will be actually arguing against trans rights, which I think isn't really a thing as much elsewhere. I don't know why it's specific to the UK, but there are a lot of TERFs and stuff here, especially in power.
Well, I think there's this weird thing that a lot of the TERFs have kind of managed to sway people around to their way of thinking in terms of like they kind of like J.K. Rowling does this, a lot of people do this, where they kind of portray the quote unquote, I'm using her terminology here, trans lobby, whatever that means, are kind of oppressing free speech to some degree. And this is something that like in this country there's a real attitude of like anything that's kind of trying to enforce quote unquote political correctness, is seen as bad, and like you're supposed to try and be contrarian to that. Like that's a definite thing that.
Well, that's the thing that like the right have been doing for ages. It's just using the tactic. I mean, like even fucking like Charlottesville, which was pretty explicitly like a neo-Nazi rally, like it was pegged as a free speech rally, and whenever Richard Spencer would go and give speeches or whatever, it would be all about it's free speech, and we're not hateful. We're just spreading our opinions. And Stefan Molyneux did that a lot before he got banned on his thing.
I think Richard Spencer's such an interesting case study because you look at the way the media covered him, and they were talking about him as a fascist or a neo-Nazi, but every fucking article about him is like, oh, he's this dapper, good-looking guy. They are like he's this eloquent speaker and all this, and it's like. Okay, but why? Like, why? It was like, do you know what I mean? Every time they framed him as anything, they frame him as this charismatic dude, and like to some degree, it's true. But the guy's a fucking if he had his way, he would commit genocide against people. Like he's not someone that we should be treating as like, oh, who's this dapper young man with his quirky views? It's like he's the same as any other fucking Nazi.
Yeah, he is a monster. Like, but and
like Hitler was charismatic and charming, not to go all Godwin's law on you, but in this case I think it's appropriate.
Like that is kind of the point, right? I mean, not all Nazis are just sort of like gammons. Not all of them will just be very weird.
The most dangerous ones are not gammons. They're the ones who can appear reasonable to the masses, so to speak. Anyway, we are getting massively off track. We're talking about important things, but like. I don't want to end on this. I mean, do we want to go into Rule 2, have no errors?
I don't know.
Do we want to follow that with how to write perfect writing?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we should finish up relatively soon. I just want to have a look what what Smudboy's been up to recently, because he said he's been posting a lot of stuff. Right?
Yeah, he's been posting quite a few videos. While you do that, I will acknowledge the chat a little bit. Walter says, I experience a few different bigotries affect me, but I'll parallel to transphobia. There are more people that accept me now, but there is also more screaming about it and bad visibility. Yes, not to mention the recent court thing. Yeah. Riot Fox, transphobia needs to fuck all the way off this planet. Yeah, fully in agreement there. Our Lovecraftian buddy, it says there's also a ton of hypocrisy involved. That word was hypocrisy, but I said it wrong. Like the Hungarian anti-gay politician who this week was caught trying to escape a 25-man orgy. yeah, that was quite the story, wasn't it?
Oh wow, yeah. Now I'm just looking at Smudboy's recent output, and some of it's pretty yikes. Like 2 days ago, put out a video saying PC gamer attacks Arch over his supposedly racist comments. I just wanted to point out Arch. That's the person who used to be known as Arch Warhammer, and is no longer allowed to be called Arch Warhammer because Games Workshop sued him, or like said, take our name out of your name, because he was a Nazi. So like.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with people like Smudboy. If we are going to connect it back to this more serious chat we're having, is that like, especially in online spaces, they are kind of useful idiots. I don't think that Smudboy is in any way a fascist, right? But I think he goes about things in a way that would be not antithetical to fascists, because he's so dedicated to kind of talking about like anti-PC talking points.
Yeah.
So it kind of inevitably overlaps with people like Arch Warhammer, right? With his supposedly racist, but actually definitely racist views.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, you could say that about, who's that absolute idiot who's like friends with Sargon? Short Fat Otaku, do you know him?
More Smudboys in the chat.
Smudboys in the chat. Oh, excellent. Mate, come on stream.
Don't come on the stream. We're wrapping up now.
Okay, come on stream next week.
Oh dear. Well, anyway, that was a fascinating chat, and we ended on a heavy note there.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and in answer to your question, you're not a problem because you're a useful idiot talking about the news. Well, I don't know if you can even like really call you a problem, but I mean, you do pretty explicitly just like exclusively talk about the news from a certain point of view, right? That's kind of the point. Like you talk about Anita Sarkeesian in the year of our Lord 2020, you defend someone like Arch, you know, I mean, come on now.
Yeah. Like, I don't know super loads about Arch, but what I do know about him, it's not good. It's not good. Anyway, let's wrap up there.
Okay, yeah, fair.
To be honest, I think we've... I don't know, to be honest, if we want to cover more of this book. I mean, I don't know if we're just ending in a deflated tone there with because we just kind of got onto a separate tangent about all the awful things going on in the world in general. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know when we're going to do this next. Thanks to the chat for listening, obviously. Thanks to Smud for getting involved.
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah, Smud is here. Unfortunately, Smud, you've joined us when we are pretty much wrapping up.
Yeah, apologies, mate.
Otherwise, we would enjoy more of a back and forth with you.
No, for sure. I mean, I would actually. I mean, I know you've obviously said that.
As well. Like, look, we're covering your book. I know I may have just said something that seems like it might have offended you a little bit. I mean, we can discuss that at a greater length at some point if you wish. But we're having fun here. We're not. I don't want to be too mean to Smud. He is in the chat.
Okay, I mean that's up to you. It's fine.
It's rattled me. It's like a celebrity has entered the stream. I mean, you're a celebrity. In a sense, you're an internet celebrity. Anyway, shall we wrap up there?
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Fine by me.
Well, yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. We went off on a bit of a dark tangent towards the end about the state of the Smudboy, no sweat. We went off on a bit of a tangent there. We kind of stopped talking about Smud's book and started talking about the general state of the UK, which is not in the best of shape, as I'm sure you're all aware. But what I do want to say is, like, look, everyone in the chat, even Smud, look after yourselves. Times are tough out there. I don't know if we've got a themed week thing that we can mention like we normally do, but I will just say, stay strong out there. It's a tough, it's a tough old world.
How did we get here? It started out quite cheerful.
We were quite cheerful. We're talking about the clangers. We're talking about getting mugged by giraffes with AK-47s. And somehow I will say I don't think it's Smudboy's book that led us here. I think it's just the general state of the world that led us into a darker area of thought, maybe.
No, if anything, Smudboy's book is extremely amusing. So I'd say probably wasn't that.
It's provided a lot of entertainment. To be fair.
Yeah, exactly. We've learned a lot about eggs.
We've learned more than we need to know about steakhouses.
We've learned a lot about steakhouses.
Yeah, and so anyway, we'll maybe be back next week? ?
Yeah, I'm up for it if you're up, mate.
Yeah, I'm up for it. I think this, yes, the anarchist giraffe in the chat there. We'll see if Smudboy wants to come on the stream next week.
That would be something to behold. I'm looking forward to it.
I would feel a bit guilty because if he did come on the stream, inevitably my audio equipment would stop working midway through, as it is wont to do.
That's true. Yeah, you do have a bit of a problem with that, but that's fine.
Smud is a seasoned professional,
No, he is a seasoned professional. He's an expert at taking media other people make and then sort of stretching out content for hours at a time. So if anything, you could probably
we can't really have a go about that, can we?
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. He's we're obviously in his shadow here, so we're going to be able to he might be able to help us, is what I'm saying with our project here.
I'm just rattled because Senpai noticed us.
Okay, at this point he's made 10 hours worth of content about me, so.
I'm just thinking about some of the things I've said on past streams if he's listened to that. Not offensive things, but I think last week I was saying I wanted to give him a little spoon and gently kiss him.
You did say that. That was a bit weird, I'll be honest with you.
The offer still stands.
Okay,
right, shall we leave it there?
Okay, yeah, sure, let's go for it.
Love to all in the chat. Look after yourselves. Stay cool, Stay like an anarchist giraffe.
Okay.
And maybe we'll be back next week, maybe the week after.
Yeah,
don't know.
That'd be good.
Look out for the alerts.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That sounds good.
Well, sheep in the box. Good night.
Okay, it's 5:30, but okay, yeah, sure.
I know, something about Smud being in the chat makes me want to be a bit more professional.
Why? It's not like he ever is.
Oh god. Anyway, let's this is Alpha Chad energy, clearly. Let's call it there then, mate.
Okay, right.
Keep that chat.